Still don't have laser pointers back then.
Oh, look. You can't have everything, all right? I mean, we got this sweet view.
It's so easy.
We got some flowers. We didn't have any nature of any kind in the
I
old...
don't give a shit about the flying dragonflies and all that kind of thing. I want my laser pointer back.
Yeah.
They had it. What was the problem with laser pointers? We didn't hurt anyone.
That's not correct. Okay. Where was I? So on my side, I'm still quite frustratingly struggling through getting the basis of the test suite down, and the complication is with multi, if you've got multiple tabs open, what's running and all that. So I wouldn't mind talking through with you the components that I've selected for that system, just to make sure that none of it seems jarring. I have built a schema that defines the shape of the TPS report object, so that the TPS report has a bunch of concepts bundled up into it, and I need to go through with you some naming clarifications to make sure we're talking the same language about it, because it seems that even if we could do natural language code, it doesn't excuse the need to have a good dictionary to cleanly define your things, right?
Years though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's quite fascinating, because that's actually the value, specifying the tests, the stories, the dictionaries, the names. Like, those are not the things that often as programmers we skip over because we sort of do them on the fly, or we allow them to be undefined. But actually, that's the hard work.
Yeah.
Doesn't
matter what we call it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite fun. So I want to talk over that with you. I came up with some test stories for a DAO, so I just wanted to check those off with you. I got some extra ideas how to improve the quality of the output that comes back from HAL, as well as especially a way to improve the quality of here's your taking three possible returns at different temperatures and selecting the best one, a way to improve that too.
Right.
That I wanted
good, because it's a bit wordy at the moment and probably quite
that I wanted to talk to you about. And then a little bit more work on the state board. I've tried to define the state board interface and some of the behavior around that. And I just wanted to go through in very fine detail with you about the behavior that we should expect. Like, for example, I'm in the state board, I edit something, I intend to pop it up above the prompt to say changed, and then like the file name of the thing that you changed here. But one of the intricacies is, if I am in the prompt and I click cancel, like discard, like I don't want to submit that change, the state board needs to react to that and be like, oh, you discarded that change. Well, that's rude, but you're the boss. However, it needs a mechanism to recover it, because delete is very close to submit. And so you don't want to, like, if someone spends like 3 hours sorting all their routes and then they're about to click submit, but they actually hit delete.
Right. You want to go, shit.
Like, oh, whoops, and then and that calls into question, what does back and forward mean in terms of threads and state boards. I just got a few ideas, wanted to talk that through with you. And then that is a wrap for me.
Sure.
What's on your cards?
So I spent a bit of time trying to. Someone just pinged my ear. Trying to go through and get user stories direct to Artifact, and realized actually my meat brain wasn't doing nearly a good enough job. So what I did instead was went to the current Hammer V02, and then got how to generate a number of pairwise operations between each of the actors. What could these guys possibly do and be exhaustive? And then I went to 3-pair, and then 4. Well, 3-pair, that's oxymoron, but 3 actors doing something, and then 4. Now it gave out some interesting stuff. So, but what I did was, it wasn't tests. It was like, you're kind of missing the point. However, going through it, what it did allow me to do is manually get the gist of what that part of the system should be doing. And I've written out a whole bunch of longhand scenarios, and then every now and again, I've gone about 1/3 through everything that is generated, but every now and again there pops up mostly it's like Redlid should be able to do that, but every now and again there's also can an artifact do that? Artifact changes are really rare. It's really difficult to find.
Difficult to find? What do you mean? Like difficult to think up something you need that artifact doesn't do?
Yes.
Aha!
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. God.
It's been a real challenge.
God, don't believe how grateful I am to hear that.
It's like, it's not that I've tried. I've really tried to find out, in each of these, have we got the functionality? Does it make sense? Could we do this? And it's like, yep. It's like, the only I think I've only found one, which we'll talk about when we go through it. But
what was it? Well, okay.
It was how to. The scenario was something new comes up, and then you talk to the system, and you go backwards and forwards, and it's all wrong, bit right, and it's like, yes, right, that's fine. Can I please save that as a batch file, effectively, batch of prompts to rerun to get the same result, which doesn't seem to fit into a business rule, because it's not a business rule, because it's a number of steps, and maybe it's something else. But that's the only thing I found. It's like, if I work with the system to try and get it to do something, and it does actually do it, I don't want to have to work with the system every time I do it. I want to do. Remember?
Yeah. So isn't that just saying, can you please condense this prompt?
No, because it needs to then be generated into a test. The test then needs to inform the ERD, so that next time you're not calling a batch. It's
right.
Not like
so wouldn't that have been
prompt?
Yeah. So let's say it took you 10 backwards and forwards of going, no, that's not right. No, I meant that. No, I meant that. Wouldn't you just say, hey, test agent, make me a test that takes my first prompt and generates the last output?
Very possibly. Yeah, I'll show you the thing when we get to that part.
Okay.
I'll show you the exact thing, but very possibly. But we need some way of condensing a relatively long thread of backwards and forwards. Sort of right. Yes, that's what I want. And then stick that into a test, and then go through the whole test cycle, so that
but surely that's like saying like generate the prompt that I should have asked for first, and give me the final output, and turn that into a test, and now generate variations on that ideal prompt.
Possibly, but for multi-step prompts, it's maybe not that straightforward, and this is a multi-step prompt. So
okay. All right. Well, maybe I'll understand more when I look at it.
Yeah. I suspect it's doable. I don't think it requires...
It doesn't sound like a new artifact thing, because it's really just some kind of analysis on the existing thread. We already do thread analysis in context with the assessor, because it reads in the thread, converts it to JSON, and then plonks that into the thread to consider.
Yeah, I guess the only possible, well, we can go through it in a minute in full, but the only possible thing is conceptually now I've come up with a new command, and I want, you know, when I'm working in the system, for it to anticipate that command as a button saying, you know, all this stuff that you were doing, you know, you worked out, that's now a command. So, boom. And maybe it's the same prompt and so on, but that also needs to be tested with. I suspect we can do it. But that, I guess I'm raising that as the only possible,
Dude,
you know,
that's pretty good. If
fidgeting
that's
around.
all you could manage to, if that's all you could manage to find that you missed in Artifact,
Yeah.
then it really is down to how do we arrange tools, which used to be called isolates. How do we make a good set of tools for you to get done
Yeah.
extra things that you want, and how do we get prompted agents working together in a good way?
Yeah. I think we're
So,
that close.
yeah,
We're that
I
close.
really do feel like we are that close. Just a quick side note, we are now able to, we have spend limits on Deno deploy, which has been a great relief to me, so I can care less about making sure that the Deno deploy doesn't run away with a huge bill,
Yeah.
because I can set a limit. So that's great. So now we're nice and safe there. We got spend limits on OpenAI, spend limits on deploy. It's hard to imagine where we can get wiped out. So
Excellent.
yeah,
That was good to know.
yeah,
Always.
always good to know, right? So hey, did you see what did you see the output of the test I did where it was doing step by step reasoning?
um,
No, I'll run it again. Just
no. I remember you raising step by step.
right.
But
So this is an example of a test assessment being run in parallel. So hopefully you can see the speed of it here. See, that's four. So that was four assessments done in parallel that all came back. And I got a bug for some reason where it loops endlessly. But ignoring that, that the time it took there was, it was like, okay, I'm starting the assessment, so we'll call that 0 time, and then it took 2 seconds to come back with all of these.
Okay, so you hit. Is this the thing we were talking about? How 3 currently does in serial? Give me
Sort of.
responses.
Well, no, sort of. What happened here was, this is an example of parallel AI calls. There were these 4 AI calls were done in parallel. That's why they only took as long as the slowest one, which was 2 seconds. So that means that, you know, this is really what I wanted to get into with Artifact, which was the fact that we can do theoretically a vast number of parallel calls, so that it seems very, very fast to do a huge amount of intelligent reasoning, and then compress it down very quickly into an output. And
That's
that
really
seems to
powerful.
be how you get the most intelligence, because you're like, how did
Yeah,
you?
there's a few good papers on that, and you know, the kind of there usually is a planning step that says, okay, so what
Yeah,
variations I'm going to try, then
yeah. So,
serial, and then
okay, I
progression
think
step.
we're leading up to the same sort of concept here. So what's happened here is, this is the result of this is a function call where the bot was asked to lay out its reasoning first as the first variable. So it generated how it was thinking. And then only at the
Right,
end,
that's the plan. Yeah, planning
yeah,
step. Okay.
only at the end does it give its result. And I love that, because first of all, it helps me understand what it was doing, but the quality of it is superior, because it's like asking it true or false can be flat wrong, but you don't know why, and also errors more frequently. but the reasoning is it's
Right. Okay. So no, this is not what I was thinking you're talking about. That's not planning at all.
nah. The
So
reasoning is never ever. It's never wrong. The reasoning, like it doesn't. It doesn't ever.
yeah, the result might be erroneous, but you're saying why do you think that? In fact,
It's reasonable each time. It never
yeah.
ever, even though it's a hallucinatory thing, it never ever gets the reasoning wrong in a way that I would disagree with it. I'm like, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. It's also if you get a false result or a fail, um, the next thing is to diagnose it. So you're trying to figure out, number one, what was the steps to get there to that fail, and which one was the causal factor of it failing. So having it listed, kind of helpful. Okay.
So
So that's it.
my point is that adding that reasoning step gives a great result for the assessor. And so what I suggest to you is even just for for switchboard and summoner, I've put that in already. So it's doing reasoning. I just haven't fully tested that yet, but it's doing reasoning as to why it chose to do a certain thing. What I suggest to you is that perhaps even with every bot with its output in a regular chat in the long thread, we ask the bot to respond by way of a function call where first it reasons about things like what did the user want, what business rules are affected by this thing. Like we get it to lay out its thinking in an array here before this, instead of just being false, this is the actual response that we would normally just one shot back to the user. But if we allow it this background ability to reason about it and let you get in there and steer it with, be like, think about the intent, state what you think their intent is and why.
Yeah.
And you, once you lay it out like that, I expect our final prompt will be of superior quality every time. Plus, the system is sort of debuggable because a human can go in there and be like, why did it say that?
Yeah.
And
Now the interesting thing here is I've been flagging this by generally speaking, using the terms take a deep breath, step by step, do this. And
yeah,
what it does is give you a reasoning.
right.
But
But
you give it in the main chain.
you got to give it space to say that makes it
Yeah.
better. Whereas you're
Yeah.
getting
And
better
also
results because it sort of works in its mind. But if you give it space to say it, it
yeah.
amplifies its force.
Well, here's a really interesting one. And this I'm getting really good results with in the prompt, saying, okay, so take step by step. This is what you've got to do. So it's reasoning about it, and then in the prompt you're saying now take that reasoning and reconsider. And so it takes a little bit longer, but usually gets it far more accurate second time round for anything that's even
So it's a
remotely
second
complex.
call as opposed to the same call.
Well, I put it in the same prompt, and it handles
Oh,
it
right.
very well.
Why did you say
Right.
it takes a little longer?
Well, actually, that's just a subjective thing.
So it might not take any more time, but the
It might
quality
not.
goes up.
I've not measured it, but yeah. So you know, this is what I want you to do.
I think
Take step by step,
whenever
deep
you're
breath,
asking it to
and then
do a
reconsider.
mental step, I think what we should really be doing is providing a way for it to write that out to somewhere, because that seems to give it a much stronger usage of that. Plus, it's debuggable.
Yes, and also the problem with doing the step by step thing is you get a whole screed of things.
Yeah, because
And it's like, where's my answer?
you've ended up with trying to put some of that background thinking into the main prompt, and that's why HAL 3 comes out too wordy. Whereas a
Yeah,
lot of what you want is actually in the background here, right? Yeah. So
exactly.
the
And
next
I've got
stage,
a workaround where sometimes I say at this first stage, just say got it. Don't give
right,
me all your reasoning,
right.
and then reconsider.
Right.
But
I
again,
think I
that's
think you
sort of
need
prompt
this
hacking.
kind of structure where we can give you a way to like a workspace where Hal does some sort of rough notes before giving
Yeah.
the answer. But moving on from this, the next level is um, to do, Hal 3 had this notion of doing three different calls.
Oh, actually, could you hold that? I just to record this. This speaks to possibly something we want to do, which is to display a you know background button,
Like,
where
why?
if you get it wrong, it's like, why did you say it? And then
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. So that's this is the extra feature of putting this reasoning in thread, is that now when you ask the question, why did you say that? Any agent can look back at the thread history and the reasoning's there. So the
yeah.
agent can just read the reasoning and be like, oh, well
Yeah,
that's
because
because
sometimes it's a problem that you put in because of your meat brain way up
most of the
top.
time it's your meat
And you're
brain.
saying, "Oh, you asked about this, and I've just
Yeah.
given you that, man," and you saying it's wrong. It's like, okay, well, explain yourself. Ah, right, fuck. Okay.
But that's the thing, because often the human believes that they're in the right, but actually so much information is flowing past that they were in the wrong. But if we don't give Hal a defense, a way to explain gently to the human, no, actually, you're a dumbass, that then
Yeah,
the human leaves
exactly.
thinking the bot is stupid. How
Because
many
most of his
times,
metrics are in 98th percentile, right? At the moment,
and
I don't
getting
know a
better?
human who ever gets 98th percentile.
No, no. So, um, additionally, I can present that in the UI as like a little drop down button where you can sort of just click on it and see the background thinking. Um, as
Oh, that,
well,
yeah,
as
yeah, yeah,
well, we can
exactly.
even
Explain
present,
yourself or something like that.
yeah, we can
Yeah,
even present the thinking, like flash it up while the main prompt is being done, because we're like thinking, and then this is the what it was thinking about, and then when the main prompt comes back, we hit that. So
yeah,
it lets the bots be able to explain themselves later. It also lets the human drill down and see the thinking and understand it.
yeah, yeah, and it's brilliant. Yeah,
All right,
this
so I
is what
think
we've
it
been
gets
trying to
better. I think it
hack
gets
how to
better
do.
for one of your other
Yeah.
designs though,
Mm.
because what we can further do is when you wanted to make HAL 3 do three independent calls, or it could be four or
Mm.
five, whatever, but then I was saying, well, we should actually make them independent calls and set different temperatures in the API call for each one.
Yeah.
What we should do is each one should have this background working step in it. So they all go off, generate the background working, and then come back and get assessed. And you might want to play with either just generate the background thinking or the planning or the reasoning, and then compare the competing plans, choose one, and then use that to generate the prompt, or do the same thing again, take the best one, then generate three different prompts from it with different temperature settings, and then take the best one and show it back. So there's all these types of
Yeah.
structures that you can play
Yeah.
with, right?
And one thing that speaks to that is what I've noticed when I'm using HAL 3. So it does the 3, and I've hacked the temperature, saying be more creative and so on, because it's in the same prompt.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's the
I can't
same
change that.
actual temperature, so you can't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I've given it permission, but also different models as well is
right.
clearly
Yeah, because
outside of it.
ideally we want to hit Gemini, Claude,
Right.
and
Yeah.
OpenAI all at multiple temperatures because the tokens are so cheap, and then have all of them do like a competing assessment in parallel, and then if there's a unanimous decision, like a quorum between the models, you're like that one.
Well, this was the point I was going to make, and this is an easy fallout from this. If we've got an assessment of each of these things coming back, instead of presenting one, you can present. Um, if I threw three separate parallel calls to different models with exactly the same prompt, and the assessment came back, one was like 46 out of 100, one was 70, one was 98. The variance is really interesting because we've effectively got a minority report. You know, it's like the 46 guy why are you saying 46
Yeah,
when someone else is so certain about it?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a variance there. It's like, how certain were all
yeah,
these models
yeah.
and all these runs
But
within the
also,
printers?
once we can get some good usage running on that, we can see which model, like we can see high performing models because they routinely get chosen as the best one. So we can sort
Yeah,
of, provide stats on the platform. But
yeah. I like
this
this a
leads
lot. I like
to
this a lot.
my top level point, which is
Mm-hmm.
that there is a finite what's the word for it? There's a limited number of ways that you can structure the way to respond to a prompt. Now, we just detailed some more exotic forms.
Mm-hmm.
There are many others. I suspect that there's a way to exhaustively define all the possible ways that you could possibly interpret the prompt, but it's a large
That
number.
sounds a big. That's a very large. Oh, well,
Yeah,
I don't know, but it sounds like
yeah,
that is obviously not infinite, but I
yeah.
think it's like.
Well, the point I'm trying to get to is that at the moment, right now, for us to experiment with each one of these new structures, run it in the evals, get a score, choose
Mm-hmm.
it, I have to write some code for that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
ideally, we would be able to, or you would be able to, write up a natural language workflow that
Mm-hmm.
did exactly what we just described here. However,
Mm-hmm.
it would be high latency because what I would do instantaneously in code, you would be doing with one more LLM call. But
Mm-hmm.
the point is that you could configure a new system in a way that was very easily displayed because it's a workflow and you can say what happens at each step and all that. Then we can
Mm-hmm.
run the evals on it, and who cares about the latency there because we can calculate what the or estimate what if this was turned to code, what would the latency be, and we're like, oh well, it's acceptable, but
Mm-hmm.
and the latency wouldn't be expressed in milliseconds, it'd be expressed in number of API calls. So you could be like, in this mermaid diagram version, there's actually 54 API calls that have to happen serially.
I see what you're saying.
You know,
So you basically are you saying use a bot to do a mock-up?
yeah, yeah. And then the eval results would be genuine because the eval results wouldn't count for the time it took for the bot to do the mechanical work, but it's really
Yeah.
only appraising the quality. And then without me having to
And
write
we could,
code,
yeah, we could scale invariantly. And so if you're talking about relative, yeah, go on. That's a really
right?
good idea.
And then you
Yeah.
could run the evals and be like, "Hey, buddy, this is a better one. Maybe you should make that into code." And I'm like, "Great." And then by that stage, I don't even need to talk to you to figure out how to do the code. I just read the flippin' mermaid diagram, and I'm like, "Well, that's it's dead easy at that point because it's all known." In fact, I don't want to, be too woo woo, but we might even be able to teach the bots how to make that little bit of code. But anyway, the point is, we need to get to that point where making a workflow for any process that does a bunch of things, including a prompt interpretation, we need that ability because that's part of the trucking app as well. Is like there's a workflow going on all the
Right. So
time.
break this down. So I've done a little bit of this. Where did it do? It's easy enough in the system prompt to put a process,
Yeah,
and I've
but
successfully managed to
it's
get
a
that process.
switchboard. You were saying
Right.
that really it's just a switchboard, but it's a switchboard that can interpret and keep track of where are you in a workflow.
Yeah. Are you talking about like in this mock-up? We're talking
Yeah,
about a single bot that doesn't rely on anything else. All at once. All you need to know is what the workflow is, which is
it's an
loops and
orchestrator.
cycles and so on.
It's a slightly more advanced switchboard that is given a workflow it starts a new thread through the workflow or a new execution of the workflow. It does nothing else but follow the rules and like shift information, invoke agents. It's like, okay, run the AI call out API and set the temperature to 2 whilst setting the temperature at 1 and setting the temperature 0, blah, blah, blah. Take those results, pass them down.
So each step in the process,
Yeah.
now the process itself includes the information about what comes next and so on, but each step in the process,
Yeah.
all it's interested in and all it can do is invoke something else.
Yeah, that's right. That's all it does. That's all it does. It just invokes something else.
And then we can put in, it doesn't, further steps will probably require the results from previous steps. And so, when we get agents passing information, being able to ask another bot to come back with something, then we can do a multi-step.
It knows, and it knows how to access the files that were running and changed within one particular step invocation, and it knows how to take those and move them to the next step as the inputs for the next agent to process.
Yeah. Well, I've already done that in one shot big bot. So I know it works in one shot big bot for the process. I think it was about 12 steps long.
Okay. And it just kept walking you through. It was behaving in the process, right?
Yeah, you just pistol whipped it, saying you do nothing else. You go through step by step this process.
Right. So that sounds very much like one bot makes and designs the process, and then another bot is made by that bot, where all it knows how to do is execute.
Yeah, but the thing I'm curious about is when you're so we're talking about a process flow. I wonder if we could get a general purpose bot that takes in a process flow in Mermaid, so you don't have to write the process.
What? But what do you mean takes it in Mermaid? You mean if you already had the process from somewhere else?
If you had a system bot saying, okay, so here's how we want you to do it step by step, and don't do anything else, all that kind of stuff to constrain it, and then I will now give you this Mermaid chart of the process.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like that's the one bot makes other bots that it injects the Mermaid chart that it wrote and checked into the sysprompt of the child bot, and the child bot only knows how to execute that process, and it has this sort of base template that we've tested, and we know that that's how you prompt an execution of a workflow.
I think that'll work.
It seems pretty reasonable, right? And I can sort of see how we'd write the test for that as well.
It'll be for an arbitrary flow, but that's okay, because a flow is made up of components, and so you probably start up with 2 components. If this, then that. If this, don't do this. If this, do both 2 things.
Some parallel.
There's only
stuff.
so many things. There's only so many things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think there's a branch of maths that deals with being able to exhaustively represent process diagrams. So
that would be helpful.
You can say like I say, in terms of prompt,
it should be obvious.
It
should be tractable.
Yeah.
Someone else has done the work. Then, cool.
And then you can end up with sort of like a very standard mapping of things, like how you have distributed system architectures are like fan out, fan in, publisher, subscriber, request, reply, dealer, router. Like there's all these patterns, and you should be able to do that for prompting. And so when any new paper comes out with a new way to do something, you're like, oh, well, that's the dealer pattern paired with a pub sub router. And,
I mean, essentially, we've been kind of retrofitting patterns.
Right? And so we should.
It's working in one case. Or 2 cases, actually.
A couple of cases, yeah. So the exhaustive way to do it And if we're good enough, we should be able to prompt a bot to, given a new paper, be like, which process does this seem closest to? And then that should help you most of the way to be able to chat with it to implement any new technique that anyone comes up with. And we can sort of scaffold a mock-up of how they're doing the prompting and then run it through our evals and be like, better, worse, whatever.
Yeah, or you don't have this component, or the guy who wrote this is an idiot. It doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then we couldn't even be able to recreate paper results and be like, well, we took this paper and then in half an hour we managed to mock up the design they did, and then we ran it through our automated testing suite, and it cost $20 of tokens, but our results concur.
Yeah.
And then hopefully people use our platform to do their playing around with, because they're like, well, that's easier than writing Python and setting up a bunch of dev environments.
That playground is actually really useful, and
Yeah.
I love the idea of, because as you know, I'm a big fan of the likes of Neo4j, because you can go from a whiteboard to something that's strongly structured.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's what we want.
And Neo4j can be expressed in Mermaid. Therefore text.
Yeah.
So we should be able to go from whiteboard for any kind of arbitrary flow or even method.
Yeah.
And then stick it through a sandbox, and we go, well, okay, so this is single prompt, and we can estimate whether this is better or worse to a certain degree, and then see if there's any new. And I like that a lot. Whiteboard to bot.
Yeah.
Whiteboard to bot is a quite interesting concept, isn't it?
Write me an example state chart in XState format.
The wind's getting up here. Winter's coming.
What is coming? When did it leave?
We were up at 21 degrees the other day.
21 degrees?
Yeah, Celsius.
Was that inside?
No, outside in the sun, 21 degrees.
Mate, that must have been awful.
Oh, God, I was hanging out. It really was.
I seem to have lost the ability to use GPT.
Why?
Well, I really do have no idea.
You being shit, or is it them being shit?
I love how you got to that first. No,
in non-prioritized order.
No, they've died.
They've died. Ah. Yeah. I haven't had any ChatGPT fails for, well, I don't know, must be over a week now. Usually it's when America comes online.
When who?
Well, when the US. Heavy users.
Okay, anyway, my point is that we may not need to be constrained to Mermaid, because actually 4.0 can generate complex things like state charts and all that, and so it could actually
it could graphs? I don't know.
Yeah, like it could actually do state chart, or it could do a graph viz. Graph viz is another language for doing complex graphs. It could do all these kinds of things probably quite well. And so, we'll have to twiddle with it a bit. Mermaid's nice and all, but it may not be the best balance between executability and visualization. You know, it might be
Yeah.
that a state chart written using XState is a simpler way to get a workflow going.
Well, I'm more interested in that's important, but getting uh, a really, you know, whiteboard style, photograph, and let's put that into a bot as quickly as possible. Now,
Yeah, I think
the
so.
best way
So what I'm, sorry, best way you've seen?
the best way I've found is to go through like graph, because any graph language really kind of gels well with scribbles and that sort of thing.
Mm.
Much better than going through, uh, kind of formal flows. Or you can be
Yeah,
quite
so
wild, and it's
what I
still
have
interpretable.
planned is that Excalibur, which is that sketch thing that I keep using here,
Yeah, yeah.
allows an embedded version. So I can actually make Excalibur pop up in the state chart, in the
All right.
state
So you
board. So you
draw
just
what you
draw
want.
it, and then you're like, now
Oh, that'd be
save
cool.
that. And then what I practiced the other day was taking a snapshot of that, passing it to 4.0 as vision, and saying,
Hmm.
hey, what, render this as mermaid. And then it did okay, but you need to chat with it a bit. But
Hmm.
the point is, you draw the sketch, you run the visual recognizer, it gives you a starter for 10, and then you chat your way up from there, and now you've
Yeah.
got this thing, and then you can run some tests on it, and yada yada, right? And that's how
That
you get a
seems
workflow.
that seems a nice way. So, say if you discover a new workflow in a business, having to sit down and write scenarios or write tests or anything, it's like. But if you can do kind of notation-rich diagram,
Mm.
it seems an easier way of doing it.
People need to come from both angles. They need to take the leap without explanation, which is the diagram, and then they need
Hmm.
to take the more structured approach, which is here's some tests, and they need to oscillate between those two modes. Like,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I don't really
yeah,
know, but it's sort of like this, to no, I definitely know, let's capture that down. And you kind of just ratchet your way up from like inspiration to like tests, and you just
yeah,
layer and layer and layer. And next thing you know, you're like, okay, it's reliable.
yeah.
So that's kind of where we got to get to very quickly, I think. And then at that point, we're not really wanting for anything. Like if we've got workflow execution, we've got widgets in the state board being assembled as jitters. We've got well, um, we've got tests that are able to do variations, so run
Hmm.
evaluations. We're sort of, what more do we want at that point?
Well, I mean, it'd be a good point. I'm going to skip through most of the stuff we're going in, and I mentioned about this one batch thing. Let's try that concept on the batch now. I'm just finding
Do
it
you
in our
think
sheet.
that list of tools that we just skimmed over there could be said to be the requirements of?
Yes, but I think we need to do like a thought experiment. But yes,
So those
seems
features,
to be.
despite all the little features that went into making them possible, those are the surfaceable features that we want
Yeah.
to.
Okay. So let's go through from the top, right? I've got uh, a blank sheet.
Yeah.
Okay. So now uh, we've got the angle of coming in with your business rules, stuff that each assertion, as a human, they need to be right. Sorry, each individual thing is correct and complete in itself because they're just assertions. Okay, so then you put them into the uh, a creator bot, CRM creator bot, and whatever, ERD creator bot. And then you get out the ERD and you get constraints and so on. Great. Then you go to another bot and you test it out. And it goes, oh, that's not quite right. Ah, right, I forgot this particular business rule. Or you've completely missed this workflow. Okay, so where you got to go for the workflow? Then we're talking about, okay, draw a workflow. And then you go into that. Then that gets sandboxed, and you say, okay, so given the state of the system, this is what will happen. And then the system can say, well, here's how we would update your ERD bot in order to take into account that business rule. We know that's self-consistent because every time we compile it, we check for coherence. And then we've got your current state. Let's rerun the state, run against all the tests. Nothing fails. Happy days. Doesn't seem like you need much else, would you?
Well, so you've got the ability to create a workflow and execute a workflow using natural language only.
Yeah.
The ability to store
state.
Store state and process it using AI agents that, again, you've prompted up using natural language.
Yeah.
You've got identity and authentication, so you can verify users and machines to be able to interact with workflows in a permissioned sense.
Yeah, that's given. That's necessary. Yeah, table stakes.
No, well, I'm just trying to describe the features of the Dreamcatcher. And so far we've defined the features of Artifact, because we could still at that point deviate off and take a traditional route of charging money for usage at that point. Right. But I think that's exhaustively, that's all the features that we really need. It's this large parallel execution environment for natural language coded workflows and steps in that workflow or agents.
I think so. And I think this is the reason I'm having a hard time figuring out how to break Artifact.
Yeah, because I think that there's no more tools after that. Like the tools are, that layer is done, and then it's the explosion of, well, if you've got a workflow tool, how many useful workflows can you make? And the answer is probably not, probably unlimited. But
that's right.
What I'm trying to poke at is that if you were to say what is the requirements of the Dreamcatcher, I think that is the correct level to answer that question, and I think that that's only half done, because then you need to say, I need the stuck loop, which is a marketplace for jobs to be done or missing things that are stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need the marketplace for, you need like the agent registry or the jitters basically the asset registry, where things that have been solved before can be pulled from a shelf, so that when you're working on something, your system realizes it's stuck, performs a search, pulls in some components for you on the fly, checks them out, runs the tests, trusts the reputation, and goes, yep, here's a fix for you that's a piece of technology that we're going to reuse. Off you go. So that's the second part, the App Store, let's call that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final thing is the attribution system, that is the heart of the Dreamcatcher. So now that you've got a store to consume previously done things, you've got a market to solve things that are stuck. The third Dreamcatcher thing that sets it apart from just the pure artifact is the attribution system that uses the artifact tools to calculate, using AI, an attribution split as well as pricing. So it says how much you owe, and it says of what you owe, who gets what of that.
Right. Now, nothing in there sounded like any other. It didn't sound different from any other arbitrary app, like a Nightmare Catcher. It does the exact opposite, but all the tooling in the artifact would be the same.
Would you mind if I just tried to draw that with you now? Because I feel like that's quite a critical piece of understanding for us to have.
nothing you said there raised any concerns as in, oh, we don't really have that.
I'm
Or we
more
haven't thought of it,
concerned. I'm more
rather.
concerned about what are we missing. Did you like my swim lane version?
Yeah, I really did. And also, I think this is a brilliant way of looking at it in terms of the factory that builds factories, that builds things.
Well, it's the tool makers.
Yeah,
The
I think
tool
that.
makers go into factories. Like you build a factory out of tools. You don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, I really, really love that session.
Cool.
And even if we add in additional elements like, let's, take snapshot of a whiteboard, that is still being rendered down by a bot that you've built using the factory into a test, and then the test makes sure the whole thing is coherent, and every time you change something it tells you if you're broken or not. Seems pretty parsimonious.
Man, I'm just gonna have a guess here. Gonna have a big old guess.
Yeah, go for it. Big box.
Big box. Big box.
Okay, stuff, which is basically now let's just for the sake of the recording, I guess. Right, Artifact does lots of things, but it is a store. It can call, or it can be used to call backchat, or backchat is doing it. Backchat has got to have the function of being able to, or switchboard as well, call other bots in. So you've got a store, you've got the base routing, let's call it, and then you've got the permissions in Artifact as well, because we're using file permissions that are based down at that level, and then you got a couple other things, lists and that sort of thing. That's kind of useful, but not really user level. That's kind of dev level. So yeah, chunk up what Artifact actually does. Identify, store, and root. I think. Is there anything else? Um, isn't that just billing and payments? Is that just another tool, which is not an Artifact level thing?
Maybe. Can I got 6 more boxes to do, and then I'll
Is that a very polite way of saying shut the fuck up, Maxwell?
pretty please, because this is the most desperate thing that we've never done, which is what is the requirements of the Dreamcatcher, and I swear to you, I just got a glimpse of it,
Hey, I'm shutting up.
and
Do it. Stop talking. Go.
I forgot what I was doing. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Natural language workflow. Okay, hit me.
Yeah. All right. As you've been doing that, I've been trying to figure out what's missing for artifact, and probably it's in the in these, but with the short descriptions. I just want to check.
Okay,
Okay, so
I'll give you a box.
I want to search a whole bunch of previous states. The example, what did I buy my wife for her last birthday? I think, okay, back into search. And it's like, you were talking about this.
That would be a combination of files and agents.
Okay, so you got search agent, there's access to the files.
Yeah, it's prompted and skilled in a way to access the files. I don't know where the commands part goes. The tools go. I'm not sure they're really part of Artifact because the sort of, it's software. It's software. It's like it controls software. That's what it does.
It's not operating system level. Yeah.
No.
No, I agree. Tools come in. Now, we've only got Dreamcatcher there, but you could have any other app. And Dreamcatcher will need a bunch of tools, but it's not an artifact. Okay. So, ask a bot, as in a bot asks another bot for a response. That would be a tool, presumably.
That would be a workflow where one agent is instructed by way of workflow to talk to another agent, which may call on files, and may call on. Look, I'm gonna put tools in there because it keeps coming up, because that's executable code that can be integrated with agents. Workflows is actually a part of agents, but it's special insofar as what the end user finds useful is, because you could argue that agents are just files livened up by tools where the tool makes an AI call. But we call an agent a separate thing because that's what the human grabs a hold of. And as a human, we would expect you to grab a hold of the workflow creator because you're like, I'm going to make a workflow. You're not going to say, I'm going to make some files, some tools, and some agents. It's presented to you as a workflow creator.
Right. Yeah, that works. Okay. Okay, so I think that's answered. Next one, models. Want to use this model. Where does that go? Is that in the app layer or artifact?
Oh, mate, that's just this once. I'll give you another box.
You got a new box.
Yeah, out of box. I mean, like, okay, artificial intelligence. I'm trying to train a little kid to say artificial intelligence. It's hilarious.
Artificial.
He sort of gets it.
Now, this is why we need AI, right? Because, right now, my keyboard, 3 keys are actually really sticky. And so I misspell things all the time. Okay, so models, the available models for an app to use, that's an artifact thing. It's saying you can call them these because
we'll call that. I think that
will need to sort itself out.
Yeah. So this is actually. I don't 100% know how to answer your question because it's almost like it's not a direct feature of the platform. It's that you can use natural language workflows, agents, files, and tools to interact with a broad range of artificial intelligences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the features of the platform. It's not.
It's got to live somewhere, though, because Dreamcatcher would need a model or multiple models to call on.
Right.
It sounds a little bit like a tool. And in similar billing and payments, Dreamcatcher needs billing and payments. Maybe other apps don't. Is that
What is the goal? What is the goal of the scrutiny that you are applying here? Like, what are you trying to sort out?
A really arsey Scotsman. That's all.
No, that's not what I meant. Like, what are you trying to? Like, you have a model in your head that you're trying to reconcile with this diagram.
Right.
So what is it?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is take my mental model of things that need to be done.
Yeah.
Understanding where they go.
Okay. So, but this is I'm trying to look at it not from things that need to be done, but I'm trying to look at it from things that we present. Like, what are the features of the platform? Like, forget how much work it took to get them done, forget what we don't have, all that. When we're trying to present to an outsider that's never seen us before, what's the feature set that we're presenting? And the reason the reason I'm trying to separate it like this is that Artifact is a significant piece of technology on its own, and so far every single person has been interested in only Artifact, not Dreamcatcher. And I'm making this distinction because Dreamcatcher runs on Artifact. Artifact is open source. You can run it yourself. You can do a lot of things with it. Dreamcatcher is something. It's like the network type. It's the network effects part of Artifact.
Yes, but Artifact can host more than Dreamcatcher.
Correct.
Dreamcatcher is just another app. So what I'm thinking about, and if this is not the level that we're talking about here, what I'm thinking about is we need this, where does this go? So for example, billings and payments could be in Artifact, could be in the app, could be just down to the app creator to say...
No, absolutely not, because you can't do ambient attribution without being in control of the billing and payments, because the just-in-time app store does not work if each app has its own billing arrangement with the client, because they're too small.
I'll take that. Yep. So to the right of this, there is every other app. But every other app has got to go through Dreamcatcher. So billing and payments, we've got an Artifact because it's very common and Dreamcatcher requires it. Cool. So we've got Dreamcatcher. We'll go through that in a second. I'm thinking about someone building an app using Dreamcatcher. So
right. So should there be a section here that encapsulates in our workflows, in our agents, that sort of just wraps that whole thing up and says natural language apps? Like, is it possible that actually everything in Artifact is actually what you need for that's what you need for natural language apps? Right, and then Dreamcatcher is a suite of naps that do novel things. So these naps, right?
Yeah. I guess the rule of thumb is so imagine Dreamcatcher and Nightmare Catcher and Slightly Restless Sleep Catcher. Uh, what is common between those should go into artifact. Anything that's common, we shouldn't be asking. You
Correct.
know,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So
correct.
we do.
Because you could, like, Dreamcatcher is our submission to say it's our proposal for an upgrade to corporate structure.
Yeah.
And we're saying that this is the way that you manage the construction of things that are built on Artifact. So
Yes.
Dreamcatcher is the project management / work management / HR / employee stock option plan system of the Artifact app factory.
Exactly. And the kind of mental um, sandbox we're going through is it's not. We've got Dreamcatcher we can talk about, but imagine what's the something that's completely different, and does Artifact still support that? So I don't know. Music creator catcher. Does it need anything new in Artifact in order to create, an app that allows permissionless musicians from around the world to put in little riffs, bring it all together. Maybe those riffs are used as samples somewhere else. Can we do that? It's nothing to do with Dreamcatcher necessarily because it's business orientated, but let's go into music. The question being, do we need anything new into Artifact in order to support any conceivable different type of first level app, which Dreamcatcher is the first example of?
Well, it's not the first example of. It's probably the first example of. The first example of a NAP is going to be the CRM because that's just.
Yeah, well, sure.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I guess HAL is the first NAP.
Yeah. Yeah. If we were to charge for HAL, and we're to get HAL to do, well, we've already got workflows squished inside of HAL 3, and it's not doing a very good job because we're not doing all the parallelization.
Yeah, but it's kind
stuff.
of you can see where if we just work at it, we'll have the ability to make workflows, which is incredibly powerful for people who want to make enterprise systems or business systems because they can turn up, define their workflows in natural language, modify them easily, have them execute reliably.
Right.
Right.
Well, let's take that. Yeah, exactly. And just to double down on that, I agree. HAL 3 is a workflow. It's like generate three things, different
Right.
temperatures,
Yeah.
do
And so
this,
being able to do
give me
that
one.
is like this ability to rapidly prototype any kind of AI related system or any system at all, really.
Right.
And
So
so
what
you can
would be
sketch it out.
exactly? And so what would be really useful in HAL 3, just thinking about that one example, is I would like a workflow that asks three different models and give me the results. So that'd be one workflow. I'd like to store that somewhere and be able to invoke it inside of a prompt, inside of, how, if we're talking about HAL 3 instead of Dreamcatcher here. And then I'd say, right, I'd like to pass the results of those three independently to some kind of assessor that gives a mark out of 100. That's another workflow. I'd like to get the information back. And then perhaps put in some intelligence inside of HAL 3 at that point, saying, okay, so if it's above this or, versions is that. But being able to invoke workflows seems to be a fundamental thing that you'd want an app to do. So ideally, if I redrew HAL 3, I could chunk that up into maybe 3 workflows and save those workflows off and maybe reuse them.
Yeah.
Now the oh, you just made a change. What was that? I wasn't looking at the screen.
Yeah.
Did you just
So
turn that red? Or was it?
Oh no, I fucked it up. Oh, I fucked it up. Hang on a second.
I wasn't paying attention. I was waving my hands in there.
Like you
Sorry.
just didn't care?
No, well, yeah. Oh, is that Schneider Twin or something? I don't know. Schneider Twin? I can't remember.
Oh my god, my brain. Sorry, it's not working. It's because I nearly died.
Aye.
Or I'm just getting old, whatever. Okay, so I've removed artificial intelligence because actually artificial intelligence is implied or relied on by the NL part of, like, we're not doing natural language identity. That's machine-like. We're not doing natural language billing and payments. That's machine. Natural language workflows, that uses artificial intelligence deeply. Natural language agents, natural language testing, that's critical, and we're using artificial intelligence there. Files has got nothing to do with AI. It's just a service that AI uses. Tools, again, is, we could go into the intricacies of what files and tools mean. It's like, well, it's a Git-based, blockchain-based thing, but it's still ultimately just storage. Tools is compute, and we could go into why, we've got this huge parallel capacity to do large amounts of compute for you, or make API calls or whatever, but it still just comes down to...
At this level, it's conceptual. We just assume there's no physical limits.
Yeah. And networking is implied because it's like, well, it's a cloud platform, so it's got networking.
And electricity is also implied, so we don't need to listen.
Yeah. And this is really what I'm trying to get at with this diagramming exercise, is that being able to posture correctly and look at ourselves correctly at the right level with the right granularity, boxing up all the implied details, cleans up our stance, or our offering, our uniqueness, but also our similarities. Like, who are we like? Who are we competing with? It gives us our definition, and so there's a crap load of details that you and I are both painfully aware of. But I think that these are the features that we are trying to surface in the Artifact platform in a way that consumers can grasp a hold of it, understand it conceptually, and be like, oh yeah, that's what that does. And then all the details are really about how well does it do it, how granularly does it do it, does it do it cheaply, is it reliable, is it available with good resilience, uptime, does it run on the edge? All those other things are really just details that people only care about once they've sort of read the label on the tin.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, let's test it. So I've got the rest of my list here, and looking down at first blush, I think I know what the answer to each of these is.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just roll through them one by one.
We'll start off with going back to models. So Dreamcatcher wants to run an NL workflow with 3 different models. So where does the information about the models come from?
That would be part of the NL agents and NL workflows.
Agent is bundled with your model agent, and you're running on this model.
Yeah, but that's the natural language part of the agent.
Okay, the next one, tool creation. I want to add in a new tool to use this new service that's just popped up.
That would be considered tools, because whilst we could allow a NAP that can, with some reliability, produce a tool, certainly at the moment, if you want to add a new piece of code, that was your question, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Then that would be in the tools functionality. The tools feature that we offer is that you can write your own tool in JavaScript, and you can integrate it with these agents.
So a tool that we've never seen before pops up, an app wants to use it, goes to the Artifact tools creation thing and saying, okay, I'm going to now create a child of this tool creator, and here's the tool, and I can run it, and it'll be executed at the artifact level, and I know it'll be executed because I've been a good guy and written the right JSON.
Well, you're talking about software code, right? Like JavaScript that I would compile and run for you?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's new weather service with an API, has a JSON. I want to use it.
Okay, so that touches on a Dreamcatcher feature, which is the API gateway market, but you should be able to use a tool that was already made that was simply the API calling tool, and you would be able to use natural language to chat with it to set the parameters like the URL, the JSON schema, make some example calls and all that. Because that's not really, you don't need to write code to do that API call. You can do that in NL with a workflow and some agents, because that's just making JSON calls out and in. That's not doing any fancy computation, unless that's what you meant or wanted.
No. That's exactly it. So in that case, what I think would happen is I'm writing a new app. I want to use this API that's weirdly different from everything else.
Right.
What I really want then is a natural language agent to say, go and read this documentation and tell me what I need to do.
Correct. That's what we aim to offer.
Yeah.
If it was something, sorry, you go.
The state, having worked through with this agent API helper, so okay, there's your API call. What I want to do is be able to store that and then call it from my app in a way that was unambiguous for my app agent. It's like, okay, call this API. Right?
Yep. So you would chat with the testing framework to work out some tests to make sure that the API was working as you expected, and then one of you'd just be making an agent that knew how to use basically the JSON fetch tool, which came with the platform, to fetch from your weather API and then return back to you the value, and then you would proceed with it. Another way would be that you could chat with these agents and use the browsing tool that would go and browse some stuff for you and feed that back to a natural language agent for further processing. You could then work amongst these tools to generate a more permanent agent that did what you wanted first shot, because you tested it to do that, and now you have your new agent that specialized in the task that you wanted.
Okay.
All right. Now there's a deviation from that I want to call out that points to the API gateway, which is that if you go to make an API call in that fashion and the API turns out to be complicated or requires a bit of state management on your side, or some other type of a vexing issue occurs and you can't quite get it to go, that's what you would call the API gateway market, where you're sort of wanting to say, I want a simple example. Let me scratch that. Apologies. When you were setting up one of these other agentic systems, you lamented that there was a long list of API keys that you needed. Like you needed Snowflake, Google Cloud, some bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, API Gateway Market is supposed to save that, because it's like you can, as a vendor, offer a way where you've signed up for the API keys, you've done all the setup, and now you're offering this API gateway to an in-out agent based on arbitrary conditions, but it means that no one has to leave the platform if there's a gateway there. Like a simple example, I could offer a gateway email sending service And so anyone can make an app, and you're like, I want to send an email. And it's like, okay, I found this API gateway offering called SendGrid, and it's got some agents that came with it, and we're pretty much ready to go. What's next?
And the only other thing is in identity control, as in I want to publish this. So publication is just a matter of identity and permissions.
Mm-hmm.
And billing, of course.
You mean publishing
you could
to
choose to give it away free. Yeah.
Yeah, so publishing to the just-in-time app store, which is different to the API gateway market. So the app store is nuggets of knowledge in one of our formats, so like plain text, versus the API gateway is services. Like it's gonna do things in the outside world, whereas the app store is it's static. The static things that are inert, and you run them in a trusted container to get them to do what you want. But the gateway market is going to reach out to the outside world and do something. Now, when you get a just-in-time app from the app store, it might come bundled with some API gateway calls that it's going to make while you're using it. What in the hell?
Hey.
Well,
possibly you had an absolute balls freeze frame there.
It dropped me out. Yeah, it dropped me out into complete pass-through and just like exposed all my surroundings to the whole internet. Thank you for that.
Exceptionally rude. It's exceptionally rude. Has it interrupted the recording or?
No, the recording's still going. It is weird.
Right.
It seems to be, I don't know if it's just coincidence, but it seems to be when I full screen Google Chrome, it's almost like the Meta desktop app doesn't like full screen Chrome.
Well, it says it supports Chrome.
Well, I know.
Well, it says, yeah. But then, you know, deep state lizard people may get in the way.
Right, so, I mean...
yeah, so yes.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's the purpose of the API gateway.
Could you stick the screen back on?
Mate, I'm trying. It's all crashed on me. Like, I can't even...
Stick the fucking screen up. Come on, man. Come on, what's wrong with you?
Well, where do I start? I mean, fleas, coughed up a lung.
Could you please be more specific when asking what's wrong?
Yeah. No, now it's just gone into endless loops, and I've lost my computer.
Oh man, do you need to like cycle out or?
I don't know. I can't even do anything. I can't even escape. Maybe there's something. How do we continue this without it being a?
Well, if you need to reset, then just save the video, I guess, and then.
No, the video is cool, and everything's cool. I just lost my computer. Oh well. I guess the screen is yours.
Yeah, but I was wanting to see the diagram that you were
bugger.
there. And
yeah,
I've
I
also
know.
got my notes here. So,
okay, well, what about your notes, and then we can roll through one at a time.
Yeah, but it'd be really good to have both separate.
Okay, but we don't. So I mean, do you want to?
Oh shit! My headset battery's low. Okay, this is getting a bit.
Oh man, this is amateur hour. We're all failing here.
It's all right. It's all right. I have many ways to recharge.
Now my computer's beeping at me.
And that's one of them. Okay, I'm back on my... Right.
Back on. Okay.
That diagram, can you send over a link and I'll do a side-by-side and then share?
Listen,
that'd be useful.
My computer, has
gone.
crashed. I can't access it. I can't get. There's no response.
Right.
Okay.
Oh,
so
damn it, we'll have to do it from memory. Okay, right, fine. Fine, 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 fine. Okay, so okay, here's my remaining notes. So we got through search, ask a bot, models, tool creation. Now the next thing I was going to say is execution of baked arbitrary code.
Right. So that would be part of the just-in-time app store, but it would be using the tools feature in Artifact. Now, I'll call out a limitation there that I don't yet have a clear plan how to handle. Maybe you can find how to repackage it. But the way that Deno deploy works is that you have to know all of the code that you are ever going to run at the time that you do the deployment, which means that I can't. Yeah, so they do have a more complicated system of being able to run arbitrary code, but it seems a little bit heavy, and I kind of want a lightweight version. So I'm not sure how to get around that one just yet. My hope is that at the start it matters less because I can just do an automated deployment if some third party submits some code and we test it automatically and then we just publish it. That's
okay. So
it achieves the same thing.
We can responsibly leave that for now. But what's hoping, or what is aiming for there is, for example, I've got a Docker instance of code that has all the appropriate packages installed. And I can just ask it from my agent, here's the input, give me the output. And it doesn't matter what it is.
You mean you want to call your Docker container that you made?
Yeah.
Are you going to run the Docker container? Are you going to run the container, or do you want us to run it for you?
Well, this is the question. If it's us that runs it for them, for us, then it should be an artifact ability to do it. But what I'm trying to achieve is there's a Docker with code. I know this runs. I'm going to run.
I think that's part of the tools functionality. So tools is like, for now, it's only code that we supplied, but the goal is it's code that anyone's supplied. It's provided it meets the right permissions and all that, the code can run, and the code can be invoked or triggered by natural language agents and workflows, and the code can read from files and things like that. So a deeper question, or more irritating question for me, would be like, how do I run a database? Because that's actually not something we have, right? So that would, at the moment, have to be API gateway, but I don't want to get into the realm of trying to run.
API gateway would do it because, it depends on who wrote the database, of course. But if there's an API that covers all of the
because there's like
CRUD stuff,
right? There's also like serverless SQL servers as a service, and you just use the API gateway to get them to provision a database for you. It charges you XYZ, and so we could give you the equivalent of whether we ran it or not. It's still going to be a network call.
Well, I guess so. For execution of arbitrary code in a Docker that you've written, I guess the only thing that we need to provide is, well, if you've written it and you're happy with it and you're running it somewhere, is there an API that can access it? And then it's down to
like, how did the only way you're gonna access that is via the network, really. And so we could just make an API gateway that pointed to a Docker hosting service that we managed on your behalf if you want, and you give us do your own or whatever, right? But a lot of this stuff actually goes through API gateway. There may be some high value pieces that we pull in-house, but still the mechanics would be identical to the API gateway. And the reason why I struggle with this answer a bit is that the AI calls to OpenAI I want them to be following the same architecture as API gateway calls, because that's what they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And there might be some nuance. If someone creates a Docker that is helpful to other people and they want to put it available to other people and get ambient attribution for it, then we're talking about ambient attribution, looking at the API store and saying who created this API and who's paying for it and what
Yeah, well,
payment method
that's
goes in
exactly
this.
right. That's exactly it. Like,
Yeah.
the ambient attribution needs to include the API gateway. Like, that's just how it must work.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so the next one, I think, as I was saying, I was going through this, I think they're all answered. Restore state. So this is, I've been working on this for 3 weeks now on this long thread. I was like, shit, I just realized everything I've been doing for the last week is wrong. So I need to roll back. And roll back and restore state is effectively the same thing. I need to roll back to the time last Tuesday where I wasn't an idiot.
Yep. So that's part of the file system of Artifact, which includes Git functionality.
Yeah. So they'll also involve a search thing. They're saying a week ago.
Yep.
And now that's a search.
Yep. So it's a natural language interface on top of a Git-based file system to take all the rough edges off of Git navigation.
And it also implies in your current long thread a forget the bit that you've rolled back to. So say if I'm working in the 3 weeks thing, saying shit, take me back 2 weeks. Are you sure? Right? Okay, right, yep, you're the boss. And then the previous week in the long thread needs to be forgotten because you've already said you want to roll back to exactly where you were a week ago.
Right. So so that's roll back, roll forwards, all that.
Yeah. Now, fork merge. In terms of your lozenges, your nice pastel blue lozenges.
Fork and merge.
It's like, I see what you're going. I'm going to work on this. Oh, right, okay, yeah, right. How about this?
Can I share? I got my computer back.
I don't know. Can you share? That's kind of a question for you to answer.
Okay, so
you're not sharing it.
What? What? I can see it.
I can't. Oh, I'm seeing mine. Hold a second. I've got a share screen option.
Oh,
take over. I take over, and then I'm going to stop.
Hey.
Right, I've now stopped.
Oi.
Right, now you try. Hey, you found a bug. Okay.
Can you see it now?
I can see a white screen.
A white screen. That's not a lot of information.
Lovely. No, it's well, you could compress it very well.
Oh god, this sucks. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
Some kind of interference with mine. I don't think so. I'm gonna disconnect.
You're gonna drop out, come back in? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop out, come back in.
Okay.
And disconnect.
Alright, see you soon.
Okay. Yeah, you can see it now.
Hey, winning. All right, so just a quick little note that when you were talking about Docker, the Docker image, in the future, what we could do is, obviously at the start, it's easier to just go through the API gateway because that opens up everything for very little effort.
Somebody else's problem. Yeah.
Yeah. yeah, and but you can still test the functionality and learn about what's valuable and see what the winning use cases are and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But an example of how we would kind of want to absorb more and more into Artifact directly, because if we do that, it means that when Artifact has this portability property, that you should be able to, it should be self-sovereign data. So you should be able to take whatever's running, including that Docker image, pull it down, run it on-prem, offline, run it in multiple locations and all that. And you can't do that with the API gateway, because the API gateway is effectively a singular instance. But
Mm-hmm.
by us pulling in, say we pulled in the Docker functionality, we would store the Docker image as a file on the Git file system.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of the tools would be the ability to call out into the executing Deno context to fire up Docker with that image and run the commands and then send them back. So that's an example of where we can pull, with some effort, we can pull different types of functionality in. With Deno
Yeah.
deploy as it stands right now, we can't do that. So we need to either change platforms or wait for them to offer more
Okay.
features. But
Yeah.
that's the
That
that's
that
the
that,
growth
that
plan.
cool. That's cool. And when that happens, what that unlocks is I've got a Docker image that I think is valuable. I'm going to make it available to anyone to use. Now, if we just had API calls, then it would be a bit clunky because we're now at arm's distance between what that Docker container costs the owner to run versus what they get in ambient attribution and so on. However, if we take it on board, then we understand that, and we can do the automatic attribution based on, okay, so it costs this, here's what you due, and so on.
Yeah. We also lose visibility of ambient attribution. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so we're talking about fork and merge.
So fork and merge again is managed by agents, so that they navigate the Git file system. The forking and the merging is how naps or in-apps communicate with each other.
Is it maybe more feature rich to or helpful instead of files? What we're talking about files is the entirety of Git. I don't know what to call it, but Git files. So
Yeah,
everything that's in Git is available to us,
because
including
the other
fork and
thing,
merge.
I mean, this is the other thing, right? It is technically blockchain files,
Right? Yeah, exactly.
but
Yeah.
then how do we express that it's also blockchain execution as well? Because there's this there's this funny thing going on where we've got some properties, and these properties are, like
That's a good
it's
point. Yeah. The
blockchain
fact that you can fork,
executable.
you can execute, you can roll back, you can record, the execution state, including how many CPU cycles you used or whatever you want to measure it, and so on.
So yeah, there's all these things that lead to other types of things like
Well, this is the I'm going further down my list around data sovereignty, but that's a property. That's not a function. It's like obviously you have sovereignty. If you're inside of a Git environment and you take your ball off the field, nobody else can play with that ball now.
yeah. So there's, I don't know where that, it doesn't fit in this feature box, because it's sort of like it's a
Yeah,
property of the system. It's not a
so it's
feature that you can employ
but also
necessarily.
that's quite a long list. I mean, we could explode identity into a whole bunch of properties.
Yeah, right. And so there are these good, each identity, because it's on a blockchain, has these a sub list of reasons why our identity is better than, like, sign in with Google. Like,
Yeah.
that's sort of the next layer down. I think we've got the right layer level here. It's like we offer artifact identity, or it sort of blends with Dreamcatcher identity, because the Dreamcatcher uses the artifact model of identity, and that comes with blockchain properties like data sovereignty, irrefutability, or like non-repudiation, proof of existence.
Sure, but someone else could use Artifact to build, nasty catcher. And say, you don't
Cream
get any
catcher.
data sovereignty. I'm sorry. You can, you put it on once and it's always there, available for everyone, which would be a reasonable thing to do in some circumstances, I guess. Say, in a public notary kind of thing, you can pull the fact that you notarize something.
Yeah. So that's sort of built in, and actually very hard to. It's very hard to make an app that doesn't act like that, because that's.
Oh, that could be just table stakes, I guess, then.
Well, no, because no other execution platform gives you that plus.
Sorry, no, table stakes is the wrong word. That is just terms of service. If you build an app on using Artifact, then
like you have to. It's data sovereignty for the user. That's really the design goal of the system, is that we deeply defend the user's castle, and we're like, it's like castle doctrine, but for users' virtual selves.
Yeah, so there are some apps that that you would not want to build an Artifact, such as say something and it's always there for everyone and you can do nothing about it. For example, so not.
What was that an example of?
Twitter, really. You see something and it's there for every generation who has access to the complete store of all tweets. You've already said it, there it is out there. Whereas data sovereignty says that if I want to pull it, I can, and it's no longer available to anyone else.
You can have both those things. They're not exclusive. Data sovereignty means that your private data, you can pull it. But if you shared something and it's public, you can never delete it, because you need everyone else who ever saw it and stored a copy to also comply. Those are two. You can have both those things at once.
Oh, I think we found an edge case there, because, for example, let's say someone creates another Facebook on this under GDP.
The Facebook model wouldn't work here, because we've fundamentally built identity to be owned by the user.
Yeah, I guess that was what I was pointing out with the Twitter thing.
Yeah.
So under GDPR, there's a legal right for the right to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And so
we can give you that. But if you shared everything you had on the public internet and you did it, we can't really help you.
On the public internet, yeah, sure. But it's someone has built an app to look through, I don't know, every stuck that this user has created, and this user has created, I'm going to be a fascist app. And he goes, actually, I did that when I was 14. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to remove it, which is the right under GDPR. But nevertheless, it's been public.
If it's been copied and all that, like, we as your hoster are at your service. If you tell us to delete it, we'll delete it. Does that mean it's gone from the world? No. Good luck. Like, I can't,
yeah, well, sure, because you always take a screen grab and that sort of thing. But the thing is it removed from the system?
It's instantly removed from the system, and there's no way that it couldn't be. Like, hang on, what's the word I'm looking for here? the I think underneath identity is where these extra features of why artifact is a bit special is things like that ability to be completely forgotten. Like that's so baked into the design that you could not strip that part of artifact out and
Yeah,
like without like really just neutering the like you would scramble the whole system
yeah,
if you took that bit out. That's how deeply baked it is.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there are some aspects of this that one layer down when we expand out, okay, why would I care about using your model of identity? It's like it is extraordinarily opinionated, and it's opinionated to be self-sovereign. For you to go against that grain would be an incredible amount. It would be the same amount of work as having made Artifact in the first place.
yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly. Okay, good, good. Um, right, I think we've done that one. The next couple are pretty trivial, because I think it's already covered.
There's some other stuff I just want to jump in quickly.
Uh-huh.
Sandboxed apps. So the ability that because we're self or data sovereign, when you pull in an app from the just-in-time app store, you can run it in a way that guarantees you that none of your private data ever left your control because you run the app as though it was running on your local machine with no network card. And
Well,
that's a big
yeah,
difference.
yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about this is, so we're going to, in due course, the scenarios I'm running through.
Mm,
But the scenarios really say, okay, with these blue artifact lozenges, um, those have emergent behaviors, are the yellow ones.
mm.
Can we stick in a lozenge at each action that the system needs to take in order to meet that scenario?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Well, you just give an example. So, sandbox apps
Mm,
naturally fall out because, okay, so I've got identity and I've got
mm-hmm,
data sovereignty and I've got the ability to create workflow and agents,
mm-hmm.
and I can sandbox those by privacy around identity. I can also run those so that you got your sandbox. You can also permission because the permissioning is that sandbox app. Yeah, okay, now I'm going to change the permissions. I'm going to make it available in a runtime. And the runtime doesn't need to be the world, it could be your company, because that's just, again, permissions. And so sandbox apps kind of fall out of that. So each of the scenarios really are talking to the primarily the blue boxes, but certain emergent features like sandbox apps, which is not in the blue, kind of just come for free. It's like, yeah, sure. You link identity to work, any other workflows to agents into testing. Boom, you got a sandbox. Publishing, you just take sandbox and add an identity, and you got publishing. Does that make sense? It's a good thing, by the way. It's a good thing. But
Yeah, and,
makes sense to me.
yeah. I get it, but well, the danger is that that feels like a level below what this is. This what we're trying to describe here, and that's where the historical danger has been, is that it just explodes in like a
Oh
bunch
no,
of examples and all these
yeah,
different
no,
features, and we're like, yeah, that's
yeah,
all
no.
cool.
Sorry, go on.
No,
I apologize.
I'd finished.
All right. I think quite the contrary, because there are a large number of ways you could weave the artifact blue lozenges together in order to do stuff.
Right,
So we
right.
don't need to enumerate them all. But
Oh, like
when we're
you're
doing
just
scenario
talking about a
testing,
couple of key examples that sort of say
or
why.
or an arbitrary example, given a scenario,
Mm,
and the blue boxes, can I do it with the blue boxes? And there may be some yellow boxes generated. We don't need an exhaustive list of yellow boxes, but there's probably some combination here.
Yeah, but
That's something
what
really quite
is how
interesting.
would you describe the set of yellow boxes, and why are they different to the purple boxes?
Because they involve combinations. Data sovereignty does not map to one blue box. It maps to blockchain,
Right,
and it
because
gives.
it involves sort of how it's cross-cutting, like it involves how the NL agents run,
Yep.
how the identity is managed. It requires the blockchain-based files.
Yeah, they're
Right,
emergent.
that's what you mean?
Yeah, they're emergent from a small number of blue boxes. You can get a very large number of yellow boxes.
You
So we
think
don't
the
need to
blue,
enumerate them all.
you think the blue boxes give rise to the yellow boxes?
Yes, in the
Uh,
same way as
how can that be
an
though? Like
alphabet.
portability was a design goal of Artifact, and it was built that way. So it can't be that you need these things to give you portability.
No, you might
Portability,
no, but here's an interesting thing for the blue boxes. Sorry, yellow boxes. Okay, so
right?
data sovereignty I've just gone through. So which blue boxes um, result in portability?
Which blue boxes result in portability?
Yeah. So how does portability arise from the blue boxes?
It really doesn't. It doesn't at all. Like you could make you could meet these features and not have portability. I could make you a
So
platform that didn't have portability in it.
yeah.
So
However,
what does that say about this column? Is it erroneous in some way?
I think it's probably saying something about the yellow boxes. So I just
Like
stitched together a few of the blue boxes: identity, blockchain files, and agents to give data sovereignty. So blockchain execution, I would say, is not a yellow box. It's like we've already got blockchain files and blockchain execution, fine.
well,
Um,
files is storage, and then execution is different to files. It's like running code, doing stuff.
okay, so what part of Artifact does the running? So you're saying blockchain files.
Yeah, well,
That to me
the
includes
execution,
execution.
yeah. So this is every single one of these features relies on the blockchain execution property of Artifact.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So that's not really an emergent behavior, right?
No,
Blockchain
you said
execution.
emergent, and I was like, I don't think so.
No, no, no. Well, I'm saying that yellow blockchain execution one is incorrect. So these are not functions that arise out of the base functions of it. So I'll give you an example. With a QWERTY keyboard,
Right?
I can type words.
Yep.
Fine. Okay. So I've got now ability to type words, which I didn't have before. If you add in an additional blue lozenge saying word processor, it's like, okay, now I can string words together. It's like,
Right.
okay, fine. So now I can write stuff. Um, these are all emergent properties of real base properties. So as an operating system, I need the kernel to do this. I need these, file system level operations
Like
to
you're
do
saying
that.
that to have a word processor, you also need an operating system and
Yeah,
like a bootloader and
you need to
a
stitch
power
things
plant.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you got a
exactly.
stack, right? Like it's a stack of things.
Yeah, and the blue thing here seems to be a pretty parsimonious stack of stuff.
The tip of the
And
stack. Like that's what I was trying to get at, is that the blue things are the top of the stack. And then when you dig
yeah,
into it, it's got some nuance as to, what type of word processor is it? Like, is it
Yeah,
a,
I've got fun test here. Okay,
is it
right.
like
So I'm going to read
Notepad, or
out.
is it like, yeah,
No, I'm just going to read it out. Okay, so I'm just going to choose an arbitrary one of these scenarios I'm reading.
okay.
Now, what you should be able to do is at every step where something happens,
Mm,
you should be able to say, right, okay, that needs one of these blue lozenges. And combined, it should do what I'm asking for. Okay, so I'll just take this is the simplest one, it's the very first one. Right, an email comes in from a customer. How is that done? Only with the blue ones.
an email comes in from a customer. Okay, so the API gateway would have received the inbound email
Yep.
that would
The
have
API
triggered
yeah.
would have triggered a tool to run.
Yep.
No, sorry, it would have triggered an agent, which is an agent is an agent is technically a tool because both the agent and the tools rely on blockchain execution, but the agent is a special kind of tool that uses natural language to do its execution.
Yep.
So the API gateway receives the email goes to the email agent. The email agent modifies the file system in some way and engages with the workflow.
Okay, right. So the next part, I'm just going to read this. I'm going to read it out chunk by chunk.
Okay, this is pretty cool.
The customer agent is notified of the email asking for the next pickup to be cancelled.
Okay, so that would be identity that's signed in as the customer agent. They would have been engaged or notified by the workflow, and then they would have chatted with an agent which would have modified the files to make the changes that the email requested, and then that agent would have generated a draft response to go an email back, and then that would be saved on the blockchain files. The workflow would then send that off to the API gateway, and then the email gets sent back.
Grand. Next part, customer agent has permission to cancel a single change, so good, but must notify the duty manager who alters the schedule.
So that would have done everything we did before, but the workflow would have passed the message on to the inbox of the duty manager, and then the duty manager would have chatted with the agent to make the change to the files to update the routing, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, I'm going to skip the rest of it because it's really plainly obvious.
This is really interesting.
So, and there's more complex ones. If I can go to the ones that started to creak, maybe.
Well, this sort of shows that really nothing really as a user, you don't really know about this stuff.
Yeah, these are
right?
just emergent. I mean, what I've just
I don't agree with emergent. Emergent is not at all the right word to use to describe these. Emergent is what I would use to describe the Dreamcatcher column, because like a market is an emergent thing of multiple transactions going on.
Okay, no, I disagree, but let me argue this one point very quickly because it's a sub-point. That's construction. Emergent is a bunch of behaviors that emerge from a very small number of rules without themselves being pre-programmed.
Okay, so that's definitely not these. That's definitely not these, okay? Because
well, some of them, sandbox apps is that that's an emergent. You know, you only need to put these blocks together without any other thing.
Sandbox apps doesn't emerge. Sandbox apps was built in by design.
Okay, I
All of
Okay,
these
let's
things
leave that
were
to one because it's not very fruitful. But I'll
okay.
call it a construction, right? Sandbox apps would be a construction. Stock market is a construction from the blocks. The blocks are the blue things. So I will stop using emergent because you're quite right. It comes from artificial life and so on. It's probably not actually accurate on reflection.
I think the most
So
the clearest way that I've the clearest way I can think of to describe it is that from the user's point of view, a user of a product of our system, these are the features that they are familiar with. This is what they are exposed to. They are not exposed to this unless they peek under the hood. This is substrate level under the hood stuff. This is stuff that they are familiar with, that they conceptually see as different entities or different tooling,
properties.
different, not properties, features, different things that they use, the different tools that they reach for to get something done. This is what the user sees. That's what I wanted to get at. This box is what the user sees when they work with a natural language app.
Okay, sure.
That's
No,
the
I'm getting into. That was my inner, committee saying stop being so pedantic, Maxwell. But yeah, sure, close enough, close enough. Yes, yeah.
It's not that I'm saying it's right. I'm saying that it needs to be grouped like this because we need to present what does the user see.
I think a better way of thinking, well, possibly a better way of thinking about it. The important bit is the blue stuff, right? The blue stuff are your bricks. What can we build with bricks? Well, we could build a cathedral or a house or a shit, a shit house. Those are your bricks. And the bricks have certain, characteristics, size, shape, certain weight. You can build them so high and so on. But these are your bricks. The Dreamcatcher is one way of arranging those bricks. There are many other ways, and each way you build it can have different.
Let's why don't we start focusing on this box because we haven't talked at all about this one. We got sort of tangled up a lot here.
Yeah, I'm just what was it? Before we do that, yeah, we can. What my job was to give, I guess, a complete set or to test the edges of the blue lozenges. And so by running as we just did, every scenario, which I can do offline, every scenario, if I can only have these bricks,
Yeah.
can I see a way of doing
Yeah.
this
No, that's
very,
the
very large thing?
that's what makes me think that this box is complete. And that
Yeah,
you
and I
know,
was saying
if
before, well, take the the batch thing that I was talking about. So now we've got not the Dreamcatcher, but the CRM, and how I do the batch is okay. So we know who you are. This is a sandbox thing because you're trying to figure out how to do this, and so you take a snapshot. So we've got files brought into an agent that will help you figure out. Maybe it's a complete, snapshot of all the agents of the system. You're now working with it. You're probably working with Backchat, another agent. Okay, so you come up with a set of prompts, and it's like, okay, right, that worked. Now what you do? Well, you need another agent to put it into a test. Then you want to test against the running live thing, another workflow. You run the test around it, and then you want some way to deploy it. Okay, deploy is blockchain files with identity, and now you've deployed it. Happy days. So there's nothing here that would stop that. That was the only edge case I could find. Quite a long, series of scenarios to test. That's the only thing I could think. Can we do that? But yeah, we can do that there. So we're probably missing something, but it looks pretty
no,
good.
man, it looks pretty good, especially if like that was an incredibly useful exercise to run through the CRM stories and describe which of the artifact features was being used each time. That's incredibly useful, and I think that gives me confidence that this list is complete, because we have little bits of all of these, some more than others. Like, we've got more agents and actually got more files and tools than we got anything else, but we got little
no
bits of
microbilly.
them.
Yeah.
And so why that gives me relief is to say that if we just strengthen all the bits that we're missing or that need building up, then we have a really good quality system that can do the stories we want.
Yeah, I agree. And also, interestingly, if I do manage to find a scenario which is reasonable, that can't be done with the blue boxes, that is really interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting in itself. Yeah, but it says a lot that, for all our time spent on this system, we can't immediately see what isn't covered by these things. So
the thing in my mind that unlocked it all was the testing.
testing, yeah,
Because that's where the guy with the hat came in, right?
yeah.
Where in all this lovely stuff that could, just exist without anyone using it, where's the guy with the hat? And the guy with the hat talks testing.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, so
on to Dreamcatcher then.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of it like, what is Artifact? Artifact is an environment to run natural language apps. Natural language apps have these 7 features that are combined in different ways to produce apps of different qualities, different performance characteristics, different features. But they all share some kind of any non-trivial or any serious app, any useful app has to share a measure of all of these components in some way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you just give me for some reason I'm plugged in and I'm still getting a low battery, which means I'm consuming more amps than producing. That's why.
Not turned on.
Yeah, I'm running it through my monitor.
Oh dear.
Which is only going to give a trickle over 1.3 or something like that.
Excuse me. Just. Oi.
What?
The line is there.
Personal space.
The line.
Personal space. Hold on.
No. Hey.
Oi. Come on. Oh, chance, man. Come on. Get a bro break here. I'm trying to find a cable in a table on a desk that is covered in cables. Markedly hard to do.
Sounds like some sort of a sport.
Find the cable.
It's the Olympic cable untangling.
Something with higher ampage. I've got the right.
Here comes Maxwell, hot off a bronze from the local finals. We've got a USB-C cable.
We should call Snoop Dogg. See if we can add it into his list. Cable finding.
Snoop USB-C dog. Okay, so alright, so moving on to the hardest part, one that often eludes us but is really the thing that stops us from going and getting a bunch of VC funding to just go, isn't Artifact fun? Let's go raise money to make an environment to run naps and then we'll charge people for usage. How about that? Yeah. So that in itself is sort of fun, but this is the money maker.
Well, this is the factory maker.
And so this is the environment to build the in-apps which run on Artifact. Yeah. So, I don't know. How do we go about this? I think this list is complete.
Well, let's test it. Okay, so there's 5 there listed in some kind of, I don't know, baby pink.
Salmon.
Let's okay, salmon. Let's trace.
The inside of a salmon, too, I might add.
Yeah,
The part you only see when you've killed it.
yeah, yeah. Salmon is not actually a color salmon
No,
unless it's
like if the
dead.
salmon came up to you and you'd be like, I'm not that color. And you're like, yes, you are.
Watch. Oh, you can't.
Say sushi.
So let's just give this a really shitty, rough run
Isn't it?
through because we've got our blue.
What about
Right.
if you do the same thing where you run a story and I tell you
Right.
instead of how I tell you what parts of
Right.
the
Okay. Perfect. Because I've got a
of the
stuck.
factory gets
I,
stuck
I,
gets
I
touched.
have a, I have a stuck prepared. Let me just find it. God, the wind is getting up. I got a storm coming in, I think. Hey,
How
storm
strange.
coming
It's not like Scotland at all, is it?
in. Hey, Scotland's very mild. It's a lovely country. Okay, so right. This arose from one of the scenarios I was doing. So I'll just read out. A truck is approaching a maintenance cycle. That means it will be off the road for 4 days,
Right.
but the company
Oh,
can't
that's a
say
good one.
when those four days are. So
Okay.
you got choice.
That's a good one.
Duty manager is aware of the maintenance schedule and must 1, minimize the impact by choosing an appropriate day for it to go into the shop.
Dude, that's a great
2,
story.
trigger the changes to schedule, which may result in one or both of drivers and customer agents being informed, and therefore the customers notified.
How did you
So
come
I've
up with
written,
that story?
well, I can share my screen if you want. I can show you the complete thinking.
No, I mean, was that artificially generated or was
Oh
that...
no. So I asked with the ERD, they were saying I wanted all 2 agent interactions and then 3 agent interactions, and then I give it high
Oh,
temperature to try
wow.
and be pissy with give it a persona saying you are, trying,
Did
catch
it
me
invent
out.
that scenario that you just listed?
No, the scenario I just read was me reading the scenario. So the scenario was in billet lists. We have scheduled truck maintenance.
So
It came back
the
saying,
core of that story, who invented
"Whoosh."
that?
Yeah, that was the bots.
The
Basically,
bot
how?
made that. The bot made
Yeah,
that story. That's incredible.
yeah. It's a good one, isn't it? It's a good
That's
one.
incredible.
And what I added was the kind of this because I know about the ERD for the CRM, and then what I've added is this looks like a stuck. So the duty manager needs a tool to minimize the impact that as the current system can't handle that sort of thing
Mm.
for the for the given system. Therefore, the duty manager must register a stuck that allows him to choose or minimize the impact based on a choice you can make on changing the schedule of truck availability and the impact on schedules, and then must tell the customers what to do. So there's a stuck for you. It's a pretty good one, isn't it? I mean,
It's a mini one.
yeah,
Another seam of options that you could use to create variances from is that the duty manager would like to get some competitive pricing for truck servicing, and so he needs a jitter to go browse for
yeah, but
other,
it's
you know.
it's it's meaty because we're talking as soon as you talk about minimization, are you talking about local minima, and you've also got qualitative in there. It's like
Right,
there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. However,
right.
it's something that the ERD simply can't do right now. So what we've got is a tool when a truck the duty manager can say a truck needs to be scheduled sometime for maintenance, sometimes in the next 3 months. When's the best time to schedule it? So, right, through the blue. So with that stuck.
Okay, so the duty manager would come in and would start talking to the agents about it and would eventually end up talking to the default agent, and he'd be like, you don't know what to do you? And they should be like, sorry, let me introduce you to the stuck agent, because we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, duty manager describes the problem, provides some example data, checks that it matches his expectations of privacy and whatever. And then the stuck bot says, do you want to push it to the stuck market? What's your initial audience, like friends and family, friends of friends, or the whole
It
wide
also
world?
needs context as well. The stuck needs context. It's like, this is what I'm trying to do. But
Yeah, yeah,
that's covered in files passed by the agent
yeah,
into stuck.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a stuck and it gets pushed to the market with no money. Then the agent says, well, if you want someone to do something, putting some money against it is good. And so it suggests from past data that maybe $50 is a good starting point. The duty manager approves that payment or that escrow
Well,
payment.
I'm saying maybe the wording's better on that one. Micro billing and payments is escrow and transactions, something like that. Because micro is not adding anything into that, but escrow is missing.
How about that?
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right. So now money's put aside on that one. Okay. And that's that money and under funds management. I'm assuming there's some kind of smart escrow release.
Yep. Yep. So that's built into the stuck market where there's AI agents that determine when the job is done sufficiently and also determine that the job is specified in suitable quality so that the QA role is removed and becomes predictable so that the humans participating don't have to wait for a person. They trust and can simulate the behavior of the automated escrow release.
Right. Or piss off and do something else. Don't
Right.
play an
Now, an interesting side question for you, Mr. Maxwell.
Yeah.
Given that the notion of being a security or not is whether you rely on a third party for something, and given that initially we'd tried to or theorized we could get around that by saying that if you participate in the stuck, then you become part of that inner circle.
Automated is that security.
And so if we can automate some of these functions and show that the platform is decentralized, can we then lower even further what the bar is to be a decentralized or not a security? Because
what we've just described is
we're relying on the AI to make the decisions, not any given party. And the AI is callable by multiple people, like you, me. We could split the call, like we could split the running of the system in a decentralized way. So it'd be like me, some other guy we don't know, and some other guy we don't know, all made OpenAI calls and reached consensus that that's what the AI said, and therefore the escrow is released. Is that a decentralized system and therefore free of being a security?
well, number one, that scenario just ran through does not sound like a security any more than me putting up something on Gumtree saying, I got 60 quid.
Yeah, but that's fine because it isn't a security under any stretch at that point. When it becomes a security is saying that when we calculate the royalties, because when it goes on the stock market, the ambient attribution simulation kicks in and says, if you solve that, you will get royalties you will get future rewards in money for doing nothing more than the work
Isn't
here.
the barrier reached by the fact that the stuck has really quite rich amount of information, which the guy offering the future rewards to
So
has already
the
there's a
guy
lot of
offering,
work to get there. Yeah, the guy offering has put a lot of work into there. At this point, it's a
yeah.
cheap
So it's
100.
never going to be a security to the guy that created the stuck because he participated.
Yeah, yeah,
But when it might become a stuck is someone else, a third party, puts some money in to get it built because they're believing what the ambient attribution forecast of rewards were. And the question is that person putting in their money with the hope of future returns that are entirely dependent on the efforts of someone else, the managerial efforts of someone else?
Is it managerial specifically or just efforts?
It's not specifically managerial, but it what's a it it isn't it isn't it's not entirely managerial, but it is some managerial. It's basically the problem is if you give your money to someone and they say I'm going to do that for you, then they are managing your money for you. That's the Wolf of Wall Street problem.
Right, right. And
But
you're saying that this could actually, the scenario, the real world, well, possibly real world scenario we just gone through, means it's definitely not. So what's your thinking there?
dude, this whole situation I am absolutely pumped about. I feel like this is the top of the mountain for us being able to describe what the heck it is we've been trying to do. So, when the ambient attribution forecast would say, well, this CRM had this one thing, and we know that this guy is signed up to the Dreamcatcher, whatever that means. He's got whatever legal obligations, etc. He has this amount of revenue coming in, and so if you solve this stuck, you would be due 0.000% of his yearly revenue, which over 10 years is like 20 grand, maybe.
Right, which
right?
is just a straight calc. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, if a third party looks at that and tries to put money in, it's like that money only happens if this guy keeps running his business and keeps using that thing. And so the ambient attribution score should say, well, that's not. You could do that, but it's not advisable because it's risky. Like, if you had 3 CRMs that all had that problem, the ambient attribution would be like, well, it's needed by independent parties, and therefore that couldn't possibly be a security because you getting money depends on these 3 independent parties not in a common enterprise. Like, they're trying to do their own thing and they're going to owe you something for it. Right? And so I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but I'm starting to suspect that because with our original thinking around the QA and whether it's the security and the participation clauses we needed to meet can be significantly reduced if we simply had a decentralized AI, which is not as complex as it might sound, because it's just simply
We can do that. Yeah.
like we have it today. Like, it's like you turn on the seed parameter in the API call and you run it between 3 people and you compare your results, and that's it, and that's all you got to do. Or run the Llama 8B model on your own hardware and compare the results and be like, yep, I agree, consensus, bang, and then you're in, right? And so the reason why this becomes important is that to build the rest of the blue lozenges and the red salmon lozenges, if you could say that we have sight of a target where we could build a decentralized blockchain that we felt met the needs of, not being a security and blah, blah, blah. That's a very different kind of raise to do.
Well, the question that we're tackling is, do we have a complete set of blue lozenges? Now, we just ran, not completely through,
Right.
but mostly through, through to exercise of the escrow and so on. Funds management does some heavy lifting there, but I don't think we need any more blue lozenges. With those blue lozenges, I think we could build a stock market. Now, whether that is within or with the securities laws would be down to how we build the stock
Right.
market.
Yeah, that's
Can
independent.
We build a stock
Yep.
market?
Yep.
Yeah, we
yep.
can.
Okay. Yep. Absolutely. Can we build a just-in-time app store? Well, yep. That's just a tool. That's an agent that knows how to call a tool that does a search that isn't an API gateway search. It's like it's part of our infrastructure.
Yeah. Search blockchain files.
Search the app store for suitable just-in-time apps. Pull them in to the currently running
agents, and then
run it. Blah blah blah. And then while you're running
funds
it,
management, I'm assuming covers accounting as well. So usage.
yeah. So price setting was like, well, if I used something, how much should I pay for it? And without that, it sort of is missing a big component, because it's like, well,
no, that's sorry, that seems straightforward. Again, with the blue lozenges price setting, I would say, well, you've now got this n-dimensional crystal in front of you. By price setting, we've chosen these dimensions, and we say this. You can change those dimensions and decide your own price, and so on.
So is that impact crystals?
Yeah. And the whole point of impact crystals is you could filter and say, I don't really care about this. You can run, I've got $50, so, is this still worth it or not? I'm going to squeeze this crystal in various dimensions.
Right. I mean, I still think that it should be like, if it says you owe this much because of the impact, you don't have to pay it. It just looks bad for you. But certain types of funds are required. Like, we're not going to run your NAP unless you got a positive balance that we can draw on. Like, we're just not going to make the AI calls for you, right? But it's like, the impact assessment is, how much do you owe people who put things in the App Store? The App Store, the stuff's done. All the effort's done. This is just royalty payment to those.
Yeah. And a payment, event. It's like, okay, so you've signed up to this impact crystal with these dimensions, and this is what pops out. It's like, okay, so everyone gets paid according to this. Things change. We've got more information. Impact changes. You might even want to change how much you care about certain dimensions, and then
yeah. Yep. Okay. And so, I think that's sort of done, right? Like, impact is like your the consumption that you did, or a forecast of some solution you're about to provide, and it's like, this would result in X amount of consumption, blah blah blah, and therefore the attribution would be done, blah blah blah.
Yeah. And each of those 5 baby pink lozenges have not called on any of the baby blue ones. Not called on any other additional baby blue ones to be necessary.
Yeah, that's right. Impact assessment probably needs a model, something fine-tuned, but that's all part of this. Attribution is, again, a system like this. The App Store.
Yeah, modeling, sandboxing, all that sort of stuff doesn't add anything to the blue.
No, stock market, that's identity, payments, agents, files. Mate, what else do you want?
You see what I'm saying? I'm having a real hard time finding what to add.
What else do you want? All right, so we've got none of this except a plan, a little bit of this because it's been built in at the base layer, theoretical versions of this, prototypes of this, working versions of this, almost working versions of this, definitely working versions of this, definitely working versions of this. So we could probably do like a graph here of like the technology readiness level of each lozenge and be like, this is the platform status, approximately.
And gloriously, finally, I can properly express my main thing. That one is workflows and agents. If I have that in an untested way, I can basically recreate everything I'm doing cut and paste. Just like
because workflows is how
testing,
you get like one agent to create another agent and then invoke it. Is that right?
Yep, invoke it, and then we've got files there, so they can pass over things, or they can just pass straight messages, which are ephemeral, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay.
That is the bit that, for me, if you had that, then that would be absolute balls up.
Okay.
And then the testing allows it to be production.
I don't think that. No, man. I think the testing's deeper than that. The testing's not just making it production ready. The testing is helping you iterate rapidly.
Yeah, sure, yeah, absolutely. But I could, with agents and workflows, I could build something that was probably wrong and a bit wonky, but I'll be able to do like really cool stuff. With testing, then I could actually improve it and get it to somewhere that's useful.
Right. So, in terms of the yellow boxes, which I'm not sure how to describe this column yet, but we have this. Oh, crumbs. What did I do? Mate, I don't know.
I'm not sure what to call those yellow columns. They're almost like characteristics, or you could
It's
do
funny.
this with it.
Yeah, and then there's another layer that sort of breaks down the features of identity, the features of fund management, like escrow, micropayments, credit card, Ethereum, workflows. It's like, ERDs, state charts, agents is like, well, we've got dynamic agents, we've got these structured prompts that take in one prompt and make 3 different guesses, and there's all that sort of stuff.
Multi-models as well.
Yeah. Blockchain files, it's like here you've got merge, pull, push, save to GitHub, delete, rollback.
The blockchain files is a thing that really stands out. So if you stripped out blockchain files,
that's the one that fucks everything, eh?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that you gotta have.
Yeah. If you stripped out blockchain files, you could put your head to one side, squint, and say, "Oh, that's crew AI." Maybe not funds management.
Yeah.
But you could do workflows, agents, testing, tools in.
If you just replace that with a database,
and so on.
Yeah, if you just replace that with a database, then you could do this whole thing.
Yeah, but it goes a bit shitty because what you can't do is that whole decentralized piece.
The decentralized piece, yeah, because there's a set of yellow lozenges that relates to this that whilst we went through these 5 and figured that these 7 could build it, there's some pieces of the yellow section that it wouldn't work without it. Like ambient attribution needs the repeatable execution.
Yeah, there is.
Right? There's something about this type of thing it's not enough to just have these, because as you say, you wipe the blockchain bit. Could you still make the Dreamcatcher? Sort of, but you'd lose the trust that's required to make this environment. Like inside
Yeah.
a company or inside a factory, everyone has to trust each other. They have to trust the electricity is going to be on, that the payroll is going to be met. There's a lot of
Yeah.
trust, and you need the yellow features to get the salmon ones.
Yes. It's almost like those yellow features are actually
They're sort of more about
characteristics of the Dreamcatcher, not the artifact.
or requirements or foundational. They're like
Yeah.
they're like the social license to operate, or the minimum social standards that you need to create the social network that these features rely on, because these are social network things. You've
Yeah.
got to have a network for this market, that market. Ambient attribution is something that helps induce the market. Impact assessment is what keeps everyone actually paying. Otherwise, everyone will be like, oh no, I didn't get any value out of that. And you're like, lies,
Yeah.
lies. And, the market, again, it's like a trust-based thing that needs to be there, plus a compatibility thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe those yellow, the reason we were struggling earlier on is those yellow would be close to, infinite, or they'd be 2 to the n of the artifact stuff. And so why list them all? However, when you get to Dreamcatcher, it's like, well, okay, so we're using the blue stuff for the baby pink stuff in a very specific way, and here's what the implication is. So I think those more, yeah, exactly, those more rightly refer to the Dreamcatcher. And some of those properties are just pass through from the blue. Some of them are because of how Dreamcatcher is wired together. And you can easily think about Evil
You could,
Catcher.
I think you could say that the Dreamcatcher, each one of these features has a has like a social appeal to one of the yellow properties. Like this is like the integrity of the market, the integrity of the Dreamcatcher depends on these things. Not that these things are what it needs to just even do its basal features, but for it to
Yeah.
really be a social network, it needs trust. It needs trustworthiness,
Well, here's an interesting and
fairness.
very 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 quick idea. Okay, so imagine
Ah,
we
dude.
block out the blue, and then we've got just our infinite number of clerks with bits of paper to run Dreamcatcher. What would we lose, given that the clerks are people and they might fuck it up, and we might actually ask the wrong thing of the clerks, and also we might have nefarious intent. I guess is another way of saying, what is the blue, given that we're building on the blue and nothing else, what necessarily follows? So, for example, given an infinite bits of paper, we could go in and burn the piece of paper. We can't do that now because blockchain files, right? We could change the rules, okay? But again, actually, it all comes down to blockchain files, doesn't it? We could change the rules, which would be the same as changing agents. And we could tell the clerks to do something else, same as telling the agents to do something else. However, now it's on the blockchain, and the test, as far as we're concerned, equally, we could offer a test on the user's thing, saying, have they changed the rules? Right. Yeah. Because there's another thing here.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Please continue.
It's rambling, but yeah.
Okay.
Feel free
Yeah.
to interrupt.
Okay. I think that yellow section is all about fair market conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I could reorder these and say that in order of their dependence on fairness, like you could make a stock market with no fairness aspect to it. You could just do like the Apple
Like
store or the
yeah.
right, and you could just right. You could also make the JIT App Store, which is like the Android App Store, the whatever store you want to call it. You don't need fairness there.
Yep.
API Gateway, again, you just set a fee schedule, off you go.
Yep.
You need those three things in order for to sort of productionize, accelerate the production of naps. You need those three things.
Yep.
But things that you don't. Christ almighty, what am I trying to say? Impact assessment is the simplest of the fairness AIs, because impact assessment is really just saying, well, what value did you get out of it in all these different dimensions where one of them is money? And that's not that's not terribly hard, because it's also it's singular. It's one person, one usage, and it's just saying, you, given your situation, this is my calculation for you. And they can either be like, I don't like that, I don't buy it, or whatever, right? So that's fine. But ambient attribution is the golden one, because it requires collaboration. It recognizes collaboration. It's the thing that is contentious, because impact, only one person cares about that, really.
Mm-hmm.
Ambient attribution, everyone cares about that, because they're like, my cut, my share, my payment,
my functions.
right? Because impact assessment is like, oh, one guy didn't pay, fine, there's 1,000 others. Ambient attribution is, money's already come into the system and I ain't getting my share. That's a very different angle to take than, some guy never paid at all. Good luck chasing him down. But someone who has paid and then it's like, I should get that. That's a very, very different thing. And so to be able to, we have long since theorized that ambient attribution is the key to maximum innovation rate.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The only way you're going to get an environment that you can even attempt to start ambient attribution running has these fairness properties about it. Otherwise, the contention over reaching consensus over what should be the payout would just simply be the old chaos model, which is guy with the biggest stick wins. Here's your share split, and if the amount in debate is below about 20 grand, no one can be bothered sorting it out.
Mm-hmm.
So ambient attribution is the crown on this whole stack, and it is the one that needs these properties. You could do everything else in this whole stack without these yellow fairness properties, except ambient attribution.
Yeah, and there's probably more, but yes, I agree.
More what?
The more yellow.
There's a lot more yellow. There's a lot more yellow, but I would take a guess or a gamble and possibly a bet, if you tempted me, that no matter what yellows you add, ambient attribution will always be better because of them, and no matter what yellows you add, none of the other features of the Dreamcatcher or artifact will need them.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? So really, ambient attribution is
Say that
about
again.
max.
That was important. I agree, but I want to run through it again. So say that again slowly.
Ambient attribution, no matter how many yellow boxes you added, which are all fairness attributes,
Yeah.
ambient attribution would be stronger for each of them. For each one that you manage to add to the system, ambient attribution would get better, but none of the other boxes would need them. There's no yellow box that you can come up with that this type of the features described elsewhere in the system actually rely upon. And that's why we always get into strife trying to explain why we went to all the effort to give data sovereignty, repeatable execution, portability, blockchain execution, blockchain files. We always get into trouble trying to explain why we wanted that.
Yeah.
But you can't have this without these fairness features, and you can't have the fairness features without blockchain. And the environment to build and trade the naps is at its theoretical maximum when ambient attribution is thriving.
I would add one into that. You could run this entire system if you swapped out AI with very trusted QAs, which is what we had when we were talking about this, way back. But now we've got AIs, and the AIs are also now open to scrutiny. Whereas a QA, we were putting in reputation and all these second order indicative indicators of, can I trust this guy? But now you've got an AI. It's like, well, okay, I can run that AI on any number of models. I can model it and decide whether I feel this is fair or not. So that modeling piece is what AI is unlocked, because we've had ambient attribution and blockchain for a while, but we're adding in AI, removing the decision maker away from people into something that
did we ever we never knew how to do ambient attribution, or were we actually trying to get the QA to do?
No, QA is one important aspect of ambient attribution, the QA. I remember we had the courts who would sit and they would decide, and they would incentivize them by having
right. So before the AI, ambient attribution was going to be just a large convoluted algorithm.
Yeah.
Right.
And a whole bunch of people
arguing,
houses of parliament all deciding and voting. Yeah, that's
right.
good.
Right.
And then the voting record was there for scrutiny.
Right. And we had to be careful about that because we needed it to be decentralized so that it didn't become a security, because it was, a controlling person or persons saying what something was worth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now we got these AIs, and so really what we need is we need a demo of, this is the crown. Like, this is why we went to all this trouble. None of these other things are why. These other things are just cool stuff that people like.
And we can build all sorts of stuff on that.
Right. Yeah. And the salmon stuff is just what we know we need to scale the production of artifacts. So the Dreamcatcher is the scalability of the artifact platform. But only ambient attribution needs these things. So why don't we, when and how do we make an ambient attribution demo or prototype? Like, we don't need a stuck market to make ambient attribution work, do we?
We could probably, if with the blue lozenges, we could give a shape version pretty damn quick, because ambient attribution is there to answer only two base questions, right? Am I being underpaid or am I being overcharged?
No,
And how do you tell
no.
in
Impact
advance?
assessment does the overcharging or impact.
Yeah, sorry, but with a number of contributors. Number of contributors. So impact assessment is like, okay, so
You mean
what's the impact of
am I being
this?
overpaid or underpaid relative to the other contributors that are sharing this reward?
Right.
Right, right. Yeah,
And
that's what
relative to
ambient
the
attribution
value that's
does.
generated. Yeah.
Sorry, one more time.
And relative to the value that's generated. So you
Relative
got
to
100
the
guys build a piece of software. They
yeah. So
get
ambient attribution is always a I think you meant not relative, but um, derived from, because you could all contribute to a piece
yes.
of software, but the usage of it leans more heavily on some contributions than others, and so ambient attribution takes that into account, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who added value? Um,
In this instance,
and
who added value?
who generates value? I suppose. Yeah.
Who generates value? Yeah. Impact assessment is who consumed value or who received value. Ambient attribution is who created that value.
Yeah. And I think now again, ambient attribution requires some kind of judgment.
Yep.
That judgment we are putting over to AIs, and we're putting those AIs transparently for scrutiny. And so you either play the game or find another game. And so we could give a really shitty answer to ambient
Yep.
attribution probably now. We could do something
Right. So we
like
need. So
number
let's
of
go
commits
through.
allowed.
Let's go through the lozenges that we need. First of all, we don't need a stock market, right?
I know.
We don't need an app store.
I know.
We don't need the API gateway market,
For a very simple one, yeah.
and we don't need impact assessment.
No.
Okay. So that means that to demonstrate the Dreamcatcher, all that remains is to build an ambient attribution demo, and we're off, right? So what blue lozenges are required for ambient attribution? Identity, yep, because you got to know who, right?
Yep.
Funds management,
Yep.
workflows,
Very probably.
probably right, like a lot. Agents,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Testing, because you can't have agents without testing. Blockchain files, yep.
Yep.
Tools, yep. And the
What's-
blockchain files gets leaned on.
Oh,
What was that noise? Huh.
I don't know. I'm on the other side of the world. No idea.
I think a smoke alarm just did a test beep at me. Blockchain files is what's required to do the repeatable execution to figure out who used what, or you know, what contribution mattered.
Here's an interesting thing, right? So maybe this is my work for today, right? I'll take in the blue lozenges. I'll give it a bit of more description, so I'm not being evil to the bot. Then I'll describe ambient attribution, and then I'll ask it the same thing as it generated these scenarios. It's like, okay, so I have 10 contributors and 3 consumers. The consumers care about these values. The contributors care about these values, probably cash, but maybe a share, and so on. Give me scenarios, and then I think that would inform.
Right. So what you're saying is, what, using the NL testing suite, what stories would you generate to test ambient attribution, right?
And we keep it small.
Keep it small and simple. Yeah.
It should be.
Oh God, I can really start to see it now. And then the step-by-step reasoning is sort of has a lot more importance in ambient attribution than just, oh, why did you say that, bot? Here it's like, you know, motherfucker, I'm starving because you chose that. Why? You know, like
also you can put in contraindications, because this is a thing that we've always talked about. It's like,
right. So
I'm getting paid a lot less. Why? Okay.
Right.
No,
And
I think
then
you got it wrong on
so
this one.
the second level type of story is how do you refute what the
Yeah.
system said, and how does the system update its fact pool or its uh, trusted knowledge bank for how it does its calculations
Yeah.
based on an
Yeah.
argument with it, right? Because that's a key
And
aspect
well,
of the system.
for now, probably just for the real dirty version, I'll just get like a dumb bot to just say, here are two things that happened.
Yeah,
This guy wrote this, this guy wrote that,
yeah.
and here's what happened. You decide. And in terms of the first tracer bullet, obviously it's going to get a lot better
Oh
than
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
And then you can add a scenario where a stuck was provided and some money was put against it, so the solver got some money as
yeah,
well. And so how much attribution is due to the funder and how much to the worker?
and interesting enough, the what the bot will do is it will spit out an answer, and if to my meat brain that looks wildly off, you start to hone that down, saying,
Mm,
you're over indexing on this. I haven't given you that part of information, and so on.
mm. Okay, so
And so
how
you can
would you
start to
call
converge
this
on something.
inside HAL? So if you're here and you go into HAL, how would you interact with the attribution system?
Oh, right. So this is not how you build it, how you interact with it.
Yeah,
Um,
because I know how I'd interact with the.
well, who are you?
Who am
Number
I?
one.
Who are you?
Who are you?
Well,
Are you a
I'm me.
producer or a consumer?
There's no such distinction in our platform anymore, I would argue.
Well, no, there are events that you consume and there's events where you produce. So the end user might produce.
Okay, well, I'll start asking some questions that come to mind then.
Uh-huh.
What is my ambient attribution balance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. All right. So I assume it's all working. Right. So
We did it.
sorry, I was thinking about that. Yeah, what would you want to know is like, what's my ambient attribution balance?
What
Which things have I
is
contributed to?
based
Break
on
that down
my
by my contributions. So you
history
say
of contributions?
yeah. So that's
What
the big
is the
pair.
most lucrative short-term thing I should contribute to next?
Yep.
Right?
What is the fastest growing thing, and why do you think that?
What? Who is the current ambient attribution champion?
Okay, yeah, getting a bit competitive there. So let me think. The questions that you've got as
Who has
someone who is
contributed
part of the
the
ambient
least?
attribution is, what should I do next, and what is the current state, and
What
do
should
I think
I
that's
do?
fair?
Right, okay, so like, I have some spare time. What should I work on next? And you'd
Yeah,
expect the attribution system to kick in and be like, do you want money? Kudos. Do you want future revenue? Do you
yeah,
want to make the world, save the world? Like,
yeah.
I got all these different dimensions.
All the work that you've done.
Yeah, you should be like, well, what dimensions,
Well, you
what
could state that.
dimensions do I
I've got an afternoon
contribute
off.
to the
I
most?
want to help. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
I'm really
Oh,
bugged by
right.
the whole Ukrainian thing.
Yeah.
What should I work on next? Because I want to help the Ukrainians. So
Right.
somebody
And then it's like,
goes down and it's like, okay, all right, here's these things that you've worked on before, you're competent in because if I want to be contributed.
Right, so that part, that would need impact assessment because it would look at all the things that you could do and it would theorize the impact summed across all the consumers of that impact, and then it would work out who the contributors were, and then it would say what can they pay in what dimensions, and then it says to you, well, that's therefore this much.
That's true.
Right.
If
So
you only cared about cash, is that what ambient attribution really collapses to? It's like what we want is
no, it's multiple
cash now,
dimensions.
cash
It's
future.
it can be very localized as well. Like, I want to, what am I trying to say? If there's a fish down there, but I don't have a fishing rod and I want that fish, I should be able to use the ambient attribution system to guide me through the next best move to get that fish. It might be that, Scott knows how to get a fish because he's done it before. Scott needs his roof mended, and and I'm like, hey buddy, I'll fix your roof.
Oh, chains. Yeah.
Paths, like barter paths, where it's like you do that, he does that, he does that, and if we can make a system that can suggest that to people in an intelligent, non-intrusive way when they were sort of open to it without being annoying, you can solve some of the biggest economic problems in the world because everyone really wants to be bartering.
You know what? Barter doesn't need a number, does it?
No, that's the thing. That's what
it just needs a chain of
acceptable trades.
Yeah. I can do this, you can do that, you can do this, you can do this.
And it should say that's kind of fair because I've seen lots of other people happy with a similar trade. Or, right. The timing of it is this and that.
Because that's something we all struggle with. And I'm trying to, get away from just money.
Yeah, but money's just one thing to trade, and it can be part of a trade. But with a trusted system, you can also trade things that don't exist, like the future. Like a debt, you're like, I have strong reputation, and I promise you, like, I really need that fish, and I promise you that I will do something in the future.
There you go. That's the whole actuarial industry right there.
Yeah. So, it should be able to chart a course for you, and if you can suggest like that to people, that is such an economic win, because how many people would take part in what they can clearly see is a beneficial thing for everyone participating, but they don't do it because they don't want to be approached in that way. They don't want to ask the question. The social awkwardness has a value. That value is around about $50. If you said to someone, you can be socially awkward or you can have $50, they'll take the $50 most of the time. If you got rid of that in an automated system, you handled the billing, you handled making sure people keep their promises, reputation, all that. That's wild. That's wild.
Well, I think, again, we started off by this, me trying to find out any cracks left in Artifact. I think there aren't any. I think what we're doing now is moving on to Dreamcatcher, and I agree. The biggest lad in the room to pick a fight with is ambient attribution. With if I restrain myself to just these things, I can mock this up while you're getting these bits in.
Yeah.
I can restrain myself to like a megabot. And
it's really just I think like if you could figure out a nice little suite of stories of like, first of all, what is the agent topography that you'd like to start with for solving ambient attribution, and what are some of the stories that you would exercise the compound agent and each individual agent with, then at the very least you and I have an understanding of what ambient attribution is to be and where and when I would like to use it, which is a powerful thing. And then
I think,
we know that once we have that, we know that we can make an agent that will do something that looks and feels kind of like what we asked it to do, right? It's just a matter of tuning.
This structure. So if I start with stories, then we know we can convert stories into tests. We know we can convert tests into ERDs and have that very good virtuous cycle. It produces agents and produces something that's useful. So I think we're in a position now to do this. So yeah,
that's fucking wild, dude. That is
tomorrow.
fucking wild.
Fucking finally. It's like, yep. That's it. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh my goodness.
Well, by tomorrow morning, in 24 hours roughly, let me come back with some scenarios.
Okay.
And I'll invent agents. I won't bother writing agents. I'll just invent agents
and
what they're meant
and
to
what
do.
they do. What they do. Just say what they do, and then we'll.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, I gotta go, buddy.
I just noticed the time because
I gotta run. I gotta run in a hurry. I'll see you later.
Yeah, but right, let's this is heady stuff.